Hello, and welcome back to Season 4 of the Fresh Finds Podcast, a show about discovering new music with good people. I'm Ryan, and joining me this month is Sega Wave artist and co-owner of Lonely Ghost Records, Superdestroyer. How are you doing, dude?
Not too bad. How are you?
I am fantastic.
I'm a little sick, actually, so maybe not too bad as bad.
But
I'm glad you're doing better than me.
Yeah, I apparently I am, but I'm glad to have you on the episode. This has been something that we've kind of been going back and forth about trying to figure out for a little while, so I'm glad to finally have you on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I apologize. I've actually not totally known what my own year was gonna look like, and so it's been a little bit shaky. So I feel like it finally settled in where I knew when things were coming out and songs were done and stuff.
Yeah, it just worked out. Do you want to take a second, kind of introduce yourself, what you do, kind of just all that sort of stuff, so that we can get to know you a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So I record music as Superdestroyer, which is kind of in a very eclectic project. I don't know that really you can assign a singular genre to it, but I generally tell people that I kind of borrow from a lot of post-hardcore and punk and more ambient electronic music. Those are the two genres that I mostly pull from and try to bring together, which is why, by the way, I love Dutch Master so much. So shout out to Kelly. She makes great music. And she does that really well. But that's kind of where I pull from, but then I bring a lot of other stuff in. So, it's kind of hard to pin down. Sometimes it's a little bit more emo, sometimes it's a little more punk.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, it's always weird. It's fun. It's Lonely Ghost Records,
Well, and that's kind of the thing, not to get directly into Lonely Ghost stuff right away, but I was thinking about this, preparing for the episode. And one of the things that I love to talk about on the podcast is the fact that the 2020s have very much been a decade so far of a post-genre era, especially for independent DIY type of music. And so I really feel like Lonely Ghost and all the artists that are on that label are very representative of that, which I think is super cool.
Thank you. And that was kind of the point. I mean, honestly, when I got into DIY, it was really heavily Midwestern emo. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't necessarily trying to make that. I liked Midwestern emo okay. I was kind of at an age where that's not really what I was more interested in doing. I just really like making music and stuff. So it's just I was 27 and I was just well, the DIY scene's cool, but there's no place for me. And there was never really a place early on for people who wanted to bring synths and stuff that felt like it was had a home. And so that's why I started kind of finding those people, because we'd all see each other and be oh, there's beeps in your music and shit. That's pretty cool. And so by doing that, I think we all kind of started to find each other. And as we kind of continued to send music to each other, I think it became weirder and weirder and more blended in together versus having songs of different genres. We started to have songs that were multiple genres and stuff like that. And so, I don't know, it's very much sounds exactly like what it is, which is just a bunch of people fucking around, seeing what they can add into songs based on what somebody else did, I
think that is interesting, though, especially with this kind of DIY scene that we're both involved in is I kind of talked about this last episode as well, is it feels like it was initially DIY emo was what people were just calling the entire scene, and there were kind of acts that were adopted into that were not emo nearly as much, and we've gotten to the point where we've kind of dropped the emo part off of it, and it's just DIY, which I think is really cool, because you've got so many artists that are doing such interesting things that really don't have anything to do with emo. And it's interesting too, because I didn't have a background in emo, and so initially when I first got into the scene, I felt a little bit on the outside, because I was always way more into the metal and the punk and that kind of stuff. Emo was never a title that resonated with me, and so I think that it's really cool that we've kind of gotten past that a little bit,
Well, so Midwestern emo in particular to me was a tag that had escaped me growing up. What people call Midwestern emo, most of the people that I knew were more called it math punk, mm-hmm. Mathy punk and stuff like that. So it's I don't know, I guess we're all kind of dipshits in that way. Genre was a little different back then. You didn't have the internet, you didn't think to care, I guess, was the point, right?
Yeah.
Genre in a weird way mattered a lot for record stores, but in the early days of finding shit on the internet, it didn't matter at all.
Yeah, you just found shit that you thought was cool, and you're all right, I'm gonna roll with it. Yeah,
you found a label like Top Shelf, which was one of them, and or Run for Cover, fucking,
Yeah.
you know, maybe a Count Your Lucky Stars, stuff like that were around back then. And, you know, you'd like some of their bands, you'd go to their shows, you'd see bands that played with them, you'd find shit that people like that band on the internet, kind of like pre-Reddit even, you know, your friends would go on the internet and tell you to go in, like, basically what Discord is now, right? Like chat rooms, private chat rooms about shit that you care about, like music and shit, but like, you know, it was on Yahoo or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like, you know, but Yahoo Radio, you know, like that's how you found stuff. And so like, it was kind of similar, but it's also very different. And I feel like actually like DIY kind of did this full circle thing too, because like Jeff, the split that we put out with the MySpace cover, like back when that was starting, like that was very DIY. And there was already, I mean, people have always been DIY. Like in my opinion, hip hop and rap is like the most DIY genre to ever exist. Oh yeah. Right? Like all of like the major influential stuff came out of DIY labels in like the 80s and 90s and people just doing it totally on their own. But like, you know, similarly, like the MySpace era kind of brought in this like wave of people who are meeting each other on the internet and making music on the internet. You had a project like the Postal Service was their whole fucking gimmick, you know, that they were like mailing shit back and forth to each other and whatever. And like, you know, this like idea of like across distances, you could have this collaboration and you could have this new way of showing people music and meeting each other over music that wasn't like locally at a show or like through like major labels or like through like going to record stores and shit. And so like DIY was very diverse back then, but there was like a lot of scene music that managed to like grab certainly like my attention back in the day, and that did do well on like MySpace. Yeah, you know, a lot of like the super screamo, you know, some people would call it scrams, but not quite scrams because it was like too poppy. But you know, all that shit.
Yeah, definitely like the like screamo kind of going into like the post-hardcore, going into like the metalcore. It was like that was like the pocket that really, really did well on MySpace. Yeah, for sure.
Like Haste the Day, A Skylit Drive, fucking all those kind of bands, you know, and like. Don't get me wrong, I like some of that stuff too. I was way into like more like, we used to call it like old school hardcore, which is more like the tom heavy, punky sounding shit, that you'd kind of hear. But then, you know, I also got into shit like Terror and like Cruel Hand and shit. But like that was more my jam probably as I got older. You know, the MySpace type stuff wasn't quite there, but there's a lot of DIY on MySpace. And I actually used to make music and post it on MySpace, and so did my friends.
There you go.
And it was like just with like, you know, whatever we knew, like, you know, I used to make like heavy hardcore music with like synthesizers, like super like fuzzed out, heavy as fuck music. And I don't know, they're gone now. I think the project was called Johnny Got His Gun after a Dalton Trumbo book.
Okay,
That was like an anti-war book. I was 18 or 17 or some shit, you know, but like, I don't know, it was like very DIY and it got kind of diverse from there. And a lot of the people I met in DIY, it definitely had more of like a lot of a punk leaning to it. And then it seemed to go into emo for a while in there. Like, I feel like what happened was like that Top Shelf Run for Cover era like popped off. And then that really incited like that DIY emo shit. Yeah, and Run for Cover was pretty DIY when they started. And so, you know, a lot of those labels, like even Top Shelf was pretty DIY comparatively back then, you know, and like that also brought all those like bands into that, I think, and kind of like reestablished that more as like the DIY sound. And that's like my impression of it as somebody who kind of like experienced it in different ways as I went, because I didn't get into like this version of DIY until I was older, but I've always participated in like DIY scenes and shit. So it's like, you know, interesting to see. Somebody else might come on here and be like, that guy's a fucking idiot, and that's fair. But I'm just talking about my experiences, what I perceive it as. But you know, that's what it feels like to me, kind of. And like, I don't know. I also think that like you can only hear the same song so many times. You can only hear a band recreate a sound in so many different variations.
Eventually, things
without
just
it kind
have to evolve. Yeah, exactly. And I think that a lot of, I mean, probably all of the Lonely Ghost artists are kind of symbolic of that in some way, taking these different sounds and kind of like putting them together in new ways, you know, whether it's like Exciting Excellent doing like the chiptune stuff that you know, definitely. Or like Cheem kind of doing like a new metal thing that they're doing, you know, all this stuff is like, it's really interesting and very unique, which I think is super cool.
I mean, I love that, you know. For me, growing up, like, I always liked the bands that nobody could ever really replicate, you know? Like, as many people have tried to replicate Motion City Soundtrack, nobody's ever done it. Because they just had a certain unique quality of, like, just the right amount of, like, pavement and whatever the fuck else is going into that, you know? But, like, nobody sounds like that, you know? And, like, I think that, like, those bands always stuck with me, and I realized, like, 20 years later, those are the bands I still care about. Those bands that nobody else ever really could quite scratch that itch. Even like a Minus the Bear. Like nobody sounds quite like Minus the Bear. You know, like it's kind of a unique sound in its own right. And like, I don't know, that's kind of what I wanted to look for, is like those projects that are so unique and so personal to the artist. And so like kind of their own thing confidently, that like they're kind of like have a gravitational pull to them, you know, that you're like, wow, there's something about that intrigues me, or there's just something about this that like, it just, you can't stop thinking about it, because it's just, even if you don't know if you like it, sometimes you're like, I kind of have to hear that again. You know? And
that's
like,
one of the things that
shit
draws me to your music, and I think it's really interesting because to me, all of your projects have a very distinct identity to them. It feels like they're all pretty like conceptual, and like they have this, even if it's not necessarily lyrically, they all have like this thing where it feels like you try and take a style of music and then do your own thing within it. And so like for Soaked in Synth, which came out almost exactly a year ago, as of recording this.
Almost exactly a year ago. Yeah.
That was like, I think that you had said that you were specifically just trying to like move away from guitar and like try and do just like synth music essentially.
Yeah.
But still doing your own type of thing with it.
Yeah, so like when I started making music, I didn't know how to play guitar. I only had like a MIDI keyboard, and I'd played piano growing up. So I was like, synthesizer makes sense. Playing synth is very different even than playing like piano or something. Just like, it's a totally different concept, right? Like with synth, it's like textures and like more like noise that sounds cool.
Well, and there's also like the glide thing that a lot of people do too, where it's like if you're playing the piano, then you've got both your hands on the keys, but like you see like a really cool synth player, it's like their left hand is just on that pitch bend wheel the entire time.
Just like, or bouncing in all the time, just like doing a little bit. Yeah, exactly.
Just doing little like vibrato and like trying to make it sound like more human. So it's like even just that aspect of it is way different.
Right. And so like when I started, I used to make like electro punk shit and like hardcore shit with like synthesizers. And it was like cool, but like not quite. Like at the time, everybody was like, what the fuck is this, dude? Nobody, my friends told me I sucked and shit. Like it was fine. Like, they were right. It's fine. But
they were right.
I kind of like did this full circle thing. I dove into the synthesizers. I started learning guitar. I like learned and started diving into using all these different instruments because I wanted to learn them. And like, there's no better way to learn an instrument than to just fucking force yourself to try to write some songs with it until eventually you don't hate yourself, And you're like, that's perfect. So, every album you hope to get better. And that's kind of like the goal. At least for me, that's the fun of it. Like, it's the journey. I've realized like the longer I do this, the more I'm like really into like the journey of getting there. And then like once it's out, I'm like, fuck. Like, good thing I have another album
I'm
already
done
working
with that.
on.
Yeah, I'm gonna move on to the next thing.
Cool. But like,
that kind of explains how you put out so many damn projects. Because I mean, like, I think that I was looking at your Spotify, and it was like the first project was from 2018 or 2019, I think, and then you have an album every year since then. In the last year, you've really kicked it into overdrive because you had Soaked in Synth that came out, like I said, almost exactly a year ago. Then at the beginning of this year, you had the mixtape. What was it? Yeah, Fine, Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, something like that.
Yeah, Fine, Okay.
And then you've got the new project, Nelson Comes to Visit, as well as just doing like a ton of features on different people's stuff too. Because you did a feature for The Merrier, you did a feature for Cacophony Kid, you did probably way more the Jeff Split, like the Jeff Split.
I did a feature on an old phone song that's coming out soon in probably September. So yeah, I've I also Ivica Glass remixed Soaked in Synth, and that's coming out on the 9th, and she did a really cool job with that. And there's a single out, the remix of Cartoon Demon that she put out. That's really sick. You can find it on my Spotify profile too. We kind of like split it as a co-release. I partially wanted to do that so that people would actually like find it. If they liked my music, they could check her out too, because her music's like crazy. It's so good. I can't believe she wanted to like remix my stuff, and like, that's really flattering in its own right. Yeah. But like with the last one, I kind of just was like, what if I went back and tried to make that album that I was trying to make when I was like 19 with synthesizers, where it's like, what if I could do a little bit of like a heavier kind of like old school punky kind of drum thing with it sometimes, and get to like my weird jazzy shit that I find fun, but not quite jazz because I'm not good enough, stuff like that. But like, I had a good time with that.
There.
Yeah, and actually, there's a whole other album that I actually wrote that's not out yet. That
Jesus.
I actually did before Nelson Comes to Visit, because Nelson Comes to Visit is called that because Nelson came to visit February 19th, and he got there at noon. We ripped 10 hours of music, watched Love Is Blind for a couple hours, went to bed, woke up the next morning, and played until 4 when he left, and we recorded most of the album instrumentals during that time.
Okay, all right,
so like,
right.
and then I went back and like finished things. You know, you go back, you fix things, you re-record some things. I had to add vocals and stuff. But like Nelson co-produced this album, and it's like, you know, kind of like it was unexpected. I really liked it. It felt more done than the other one, and so like the other one, I have like 9 songs already sitting for next year that I think Jake from the Marrier is going to do guitar on for all of it.
And for those who aren't aware, Nelson is...
Leave Nelson be. Yeah. We've known each other forever. So we've been friends for like literally, I think 20 years this year. I've known him since we were in like high school. And so it's like weird that we've never like fully made music like this together.
And you guys just announced that he's got a ton of projects coming out too, right?
Yeah. So Nelson has his first actual, like his own LP. It's the first one in years. He's been working on this since literally like 2021 probably, but he's gone through various iterations of the album, and this one's really good. I mean, this is probably the best version of it, but he's putting that out, and then he's doing a mixtape because he's been remixing a lot of like popular songs he's found stems for, rap songs, stuff like that. And so it's really cool, but he can't like put it out on streaming because he doesn't technically, he can't charge for it or anything.
It's a rights thing. Yeah.
Right. So he's going to put it out on SoundCloud because you can't clear those types of samples. But then, you know, he has the album that he co-produced with me coming out, which you'll definitely hear a lot of Nelson in there. Just, you know, some of the instrumental types of things that he does, you know. We had a really good time. Like, we're going to definitely try to get together and do something else. I had bought this synthesizer, which is just like, it's called
I was about to ask you about that.
Yeah, so the first 3 channels here are FM synthesis, which is like the Sega chip, basically. These 2 channels are a chip tune for like basically like actual chiptune chip, and then this one is a sample bank of Sega drums that they like replicated. So it's really badass.
Oh, that's sick.
And so that's why, you know, the album has like the Sega aesthetic because of that, because it has like very Sega sounding kind of influence on it, and you know.
No, I think that's super cool. I really like. Is it the Genesis that the cover art is like based off of?
Well, so like,
and then also like very like what is it?
Earthbound.
Mother, like Earthbound.
Yeah. So like basically I kind of wanted to combine them because it was more inspired by Earthbound, like aesthetically, and like the idea was from kind of Earthbound, like Saturnville, Saturn Valley inspired it. Like it's the first break you get where everybody's not charging you a bunch of money and they help you out for free and stuff, and it's kind of like a nice break. And that's where Saturnville started, and that was like maybe the first song that I put some words on. And so that kind of inspired the idea. So I kind of wanted to do an homage to both. And like Superdestroyer covers are always kind of like a alternative universe version of the world, kind of like an alternative perspective. There's always like subtle differences. Like for Soaked in Synth, my synth has pink keys, not blue, but like in real life it's blue. The shirt that my partner's wearing in the other cover, like that color of it doesn't exist. I did that just for the cover, just because I think it's fun to like do little weird
just
things,
little,
you know,
little like bizarro things that that's
like a dream world.
Interesting.
Like a dream state, because in my mind, like my music is kind of like a little bit like a surrealist, dreamy sort of thing going on with it a lot of times. And like I like the art to just be like a little bit off, a little bit like weird, a little bit like parallel universe kind of deal.
Which is, I'm assuming, also like part of, aside from just kind of wanting to, you know, remain anonymous online, but I assume that like that also kind of plays into the always like blurring your face or like covering it or doing something to like obscure it, like whenever you post stuff like that. I assume that kind of like ties into that aesthetic as well as being like a, you know, personal choice as well, right?
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Like honestly, the identity stuff, you know, I used to work in like a teaching position at a university, and I didn't really want them to give me trouble over what I was doing or to be monitoring what I was doing because they had been very weird about their contracts. So once I left there, I got a job working for like a guy who knew me before I ever started this label. Like I don't really care. It's just more of like easy to kind of keep it separated because I do work with kids who have like disabilities and stuff, and like, you know, their parents probably don't need to be able to like Google me and see what I think about anything on the internet. It's just better that we keep it, you know, I work with their kid and, you know, I don't ask people, you know, that's not how it works, right? But at the end of the day, I don't really give that much of a shit at this point. It's just more that it's really fun to kind of keep myself out of it to a certain degree.
Well, it's also kind of like a shtick. You've committed to the bit at this point, and so you just got to like keep it going. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's fun. That's super cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
and
it's almost like a little game. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like, you know, it is kind of nice to just be able to like do stuff and not really have to worry about like the DIY shit. Like I like being able to go to shows and not have to like always interact if like I'm really not there to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I only can then seek out the people I'm there to see that know I'm going to be there.
Yeah, I can go up to somebody and be like, "Hey, this is me," as opposed to somebody else coming up and be like, "Yo, what's up?" Yeah.
Right. It's just like nice for like actually when I go to do things with people that I can actually like spend time with the people I intend to. Where like, you know, sometimes that doesn't happen when you know like 50 other people from the internet that you're like, I didn't know you were going to be here, but also like, you know, I know you tangentially. This person I talk to every day, and I'm going to see them this one time. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So, you know. That kind of thing, but I don't know, it's also just mostly fun. Like it's really fun to like come up with different ways to hide your face or to like recreate yourself and like to make it all kind of cohesive.
I thought that the really funny one was the one that's currently your Twitter avatar, where it's just got Nelson's face or hand in front of your face.
Yeah, that was fun.
Fucking hilarious.
I was like, that turned out perfect. You know? Yeah. Exactly. You know, so it's like, yeah, I have fun with it, and it's like kind of fun to get other people in on the ideas, and it lets me do like more things with the art, I think, just because like I can kind of like do album out. And like as I do more of my own artwork, my album covers, like I'm able to kind of bring everything together in a way that's like really fun.
Yeah, for sure. So you said that you started out on the piano, right?
Yeah.
Was it after you started making music, like trying to do stuff yourself? Was that because you also play the drums and the guitar as well, right? Like, were those things that you picked up kind of out of necessity, or was it like just like always had like an interest in trying to like learn new stuff? Like,
both, I would say, kind of like, you know, it's hard to get a band together when everybody has like jobs and careers, or we're just trying to like get by. I mean, like I don't know anybody who ever had any money really back then, especially like, you know, everybody was working all the time, and a lot of my friends worked in restaurants and I worked in schools. So my days started early, and while I would be able to close down a bar with them, I wasn't able to stay up all night to go jam at their house starting at 4 in the morning like they could, you know, because I had to be at work at like 8 in the morning or whatever for my job. So it was like the schedules didn't line up. I moved to Columbus, so I only knew so many people here. And I don't know. Yeah, I also just always wanted to learn guitar and drums and stuff. Like I started learning guitar in Michigan. I like playing instruments. Like that's the fun of it for me. Like I bought this new synthesizer just to see what it'd do. Like what would it, you know, can I make it sound cool? Just to
kind of learn new things and play around with it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so like that's kind of like, that's really a lot of the label and the project and everything is just kind of like seeing what happens, I guess. Like you try things out, you try to navigate as you go, and you just see what happens. I don't know, it's fun to not know, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. I've started kind of like going in that way a little bit. Like I've got I announced it on the last episode of the podcast, but I still need to do like a formal announcement and like actually release it. But like this year was the first year that I like organized like a little compilation like EP album thing, and it was exactly the same thing of just like I don't know how this is going to turn out, but it's something that I've always thought would be interesting. So it's like I just want to like, you know, put my all into it, kind of figure it out. So I think it's kind of like the exact same thing there. Yeah.
I mean, literally, that's basically how we kind of started. You know, it's just like we found a few people that were like, your music's cool. I don't know, it'd probably be better if we worked together than by ourselves. What if we tried to figure out how to like send emails to people about music and shit, and then it just evolved from there. Like literally, like we had no idea what we were doing.
So like with Lonely Ghost, I assume that there were kind of like the people that were around you when you guys decided to like start the label. Who was the first like artist that was signed that was like not really like a part of it from the very beginning?
Alex from Arise, Sir. So basically, the first 5 of us all kind of started at the same time. A couple of the artists were younger. A couple of them were like older, our age. So like, you know, we kind of span the spectrum of kind of like where people were in life and things like that. People are just like getting started out versus some of us that are like trying to like do more of like the management side of things with the business of like, how do I release a song versus people who are trying to figure out like, how do I like participate in the community? And so like, you know,
sure.
As a teacher, I always like get something from trying to create environments that foster skills and talents. And I felt like, you know, this label kind of started to turn into that pretty quickly, whereas like no matter anybody's age or experience in music, everybody got better. You know, no matter where anybody was at when they started, like everybody got better and everybody started figuring out like more of their own musical identities. And just like, it was cool. It was cool to see people at different stages in life with different goals. Like you see somebody like Caleb or, you know, like Sophia from Funeral Homes that are younger that are probably going to go pursue things like maybe more seriously in music where they're like, hey, I want to go like try to be a band that can like self-sustain and maybe like eventually feed myself. Or like someone like me or Nelson, we're really more into it just because it's cool to make music and like to meet good musicians and shit. Like we're here to kind of foster the community of it or to try to help those people like do better while we get to continue to like have fun with it. You know, and so it's like, I guess in that way, it kind of started with sort of like a very casual vibe. It was more just like, how can we help each other just kind of like have fun, do this thing, you know, it's DIY. Like I didn't, like there were bands coming out of DIY, but like it was more of just a thing to just be like, if you don't have people to help out, like you're going to quit. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You need people to just bounce stuff back around. It was like, what if we could help each other out? And originally, the idea was more of like everybody would do a different like goal, like a different function in the label, and each artist would kind of do a part of it. But very quickly, we realized like that's not gonna work out, and so like it became more of like a label, and that sort of structure. And then Shane and I just like learned how to fucking do like anything that we needed to do as we went, and you know that. Like now I do like a lot of the graphic design shit, like, you know, mock-ups, like all that stuff. Like we had no fucking clue what we were doing when we started. Like I cannot stress that enough. Like I'd never used Photoshop until I started doing this. Like I had no fucking clue, you know? So
well, I think it's really funny too, like seeing people like, you know, the first project and you're like, what do I do? And so it's like you've got somebody who's like spent, you know, months and months and months making this project, and then they're like, all right, so now in the next week I'm gonna teach myself how to use GIMP so that I can make my album art or something like that. I think it is really interesting. Like you get a very well-rounded, like kind of weird artistic skill set trying to like release music yourself, because like you have to just learn these different things that you never really thought would be part of the process.
Well, 100%. And that's always a huge factor in it, really. Like there's so many times where, sorry, my camera died. I'm going to have to plug it in for a minute. Give me 1 second. I can charge it while I'll cut out a video for a minute, but yeah, like you do get really well-rounded with the skills that you pick up, and like everybody does. Like so many of the artists, you know, they mix and master their own music. They like Funeral Homes. Sophia, has always done her own art for her albums, and her graphic design is like so good. You know, and so just like there's a lot of cool talents like that, and like everybody's from all over the country. You know, we just kind of like talk about music on Twitter, which is the funniest part about it. You know what I mean? Like it's cool that eventually I've gotten to meet a lot of the people on the label at like things like Coachella, mostly stuff like that. You know, festivals and stuff. But like, you know, it's really just like people on Twitter who kind of like fuck with each other's music once in a while, will like help each other out with like, how do you do this in a DAW, right? Like how do I like mix this? How do I EQ this? Does this song sound cool?
Just somebody has like a question, and then all of a sudden you've been talking back and forth for like a week straight, and you never even like realized it. You're like, oh shit, we're kind of like actually friends now.
But it's like, you know, it's more like
really funny. Yeah,
it's not super personal a lot of the time. It's more just like, you know, like our interest, right? Like it's like literally like you get to like nerd out with people about like music and shit. And, like sometimes people will want to like talk about like real life shit, but like mostly it's funny because like the label is just built on people being like, yo, is this song cool? This sounds good, but like if you added like a riff over this, that would sound better. All right, like that's literally like, and then you know, knowing that if you don't put a song out,
what if you did like a delay throw here? Yeah,
you know, and then the other part is like you're in a group chat with like all these talented people, and they send you a new song, and you're like, well, fuck, my music has to sound at least as good as this now. So I'm gonna have to like figure out how to level myself up, and I feel like that's the other thing about it is like, you know, that's kind of like the cool part about
it's like an arms race of skill. You're just like you keep trying to like outdo each other.
I don't know if it's quite like
not in a
yeah.
truly competitive
not
way,
a competitive way, but
in like a friendly competition,
in
you
the
keep
DIY
pushing each other
anxious
to like
way.
yeah.
Right? Like the personal anxiety of every DIY artist that they don't want to be like the weakest link, I think. It's like that more. It's like, I can't be the fucking worst artist on this label, dude. I can't know I'm the worst artist on this label. You know? So it's like, I think like some people probably have less of a fear of that than others. I can say that I'm more on the tail end of that where I'm like, don't let me be the worst artist on this label. You know? But like, so I always have to try harder, even though, you know, I don't know that I ever succeed, but like, it's fun and like, it's really cool to see people help each other out and cheer each other on and like help each other learn how to do things and like book tours. And, you know, it's like, it's just DIY, like online Twitter basically. But then as we've moved on, you know, there's obviously the same resources of just like swapping stuff back and forth. But then also Shane and I actually do a lot of like real label shit. And so like, you know, Henderson Cole helped us start the label. In the sense of he helped us like structure it after we filed the LLC. We knew we had to file an LLC because we didn't want to be personally liable. And Shane looked that up on the internet. You know, that's how we figured out how to start a label. Shane Googled it.
God bless the internet.
I know. Well, at least before now, right? Like now with this AI shit, it probably would be like, you have to call some, you know, here's how so-and-so started a label. And it's like, you needed $1 million, you know, like stupid shit. but yeah, so like Henderson kind of taught us like how to structure things in a way that was like fair to artists, and you know, we gave them like really good splits, and we did the copyright we like learned about copyright and trademarking and like how to put out music and all this shit. And so, you know, as we went, we did more of that. We learned merch deals, vinyl, physicals. You know, like we have a merch distributor now that does shit for us. Thanks to Jake from Counterintuitive, who helped hook us up with a better merch provider after we got screwed by another one. But like, you know, it's just like you grow as you need to. And like, as we take on a band like Hey, I Love You that all of a sudden needed vinyl, we learned how to make vinyl. And, you know, it's just like, that's, I think, the DIY spirit. And that's always been kind of the way that I think everything is kind of unfolded with this label.
So I'm a little bit curious, and if it's too, you know, too like personal on that or like whatever, but like I know that a lot of the time, like it's kind of like a labels thing that they help fund different things, whether that's, you know, getting the physicals made for a record or like funding the actual production of it and like that sort of thing. Is that something that you guys do more, or is it a lot more of like the like technical support, I guess, kind of aspect of it?
We do a lot of front end on merch. So most of our money that we're lending out tends to go towards vinyl, tapes, people making shirts for tours. I mean, a run of vinyl is depending on which company we had to work with, anywhere between $4,000, $3,000 to $4,000 at every single time. So if you don't break even, that's just $4,000 somebody doesn't have, right?
$4,000 we take on that in liability. The can. That
Right. So we used to take on that liability when we used to have to put more up front. Like now we still do, but a lot of the times we do splits with bands and stuff. By the time we get there, if the pre-sales are done and stuff, it's not as big of a deal. It depends on the band, right? It depends on how much they're going to sell. We don't do as much on the production side, but that's also because we're a DIY label. I don't believe in spending $10,000 to make a fucking album.
I mean, I was going to say people. Everybody's going to be producing it in their like their bedroom or whatever.
Like,
but
I don't judge people for doing that, but I don't know why you would release with us. Like you would go to a label that like is releasing music that is going to cost $50,000 to release, you know? Like with us, we do work with people who record in studios and spend more sometimes, but maybe not 10,000, you know? But the thing is just like, I think a lot of the times with the amount of talent that people have on this label, like a lot of the times they're able to produce things and stuff. It sounds good. Like Nelson mixes all of his own music. I work with an audio engineer, but like I've kind of learned how to clean up my audio for all the newer stuff I'm recording and making it sound better and like learning how to audio engineer. Shiloh, who used to record as Hacker, is an audio engineer. Jake is basically an audio engineer. He mixes all of his own music. Gregory is an audio engineer, mixes all of their own music. Ultimately, it doesn't make sense to spend that money, especially when even with me, the person who works with me basically works for the label and gives us discounts and will help us out. So it's like most people aren't paying for recording. Hey, I Love You does. Just because they're out in the middle of nowhere and they have like a lot bigger band than most of us do. A lot of A Lonely Ghost is really like one or two people in a project.
I was gonna say, Hey, I Love You is one of the only like more traditional like
them and Cheem
band setups really on the label. Yeah,
Cheem,
them
Hodera,
and Cheem are like
it's Cheem, Hodera, Hey, I Love You, New You. New You started as a solo project though. But yeah, like Cheem records their own music and mixes it. you know, and they record all their own stuff, and it sounds great, you know.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Yeah.
Hodera does use a studio, and they spend a decent amount on their music, but they're also like a different kind of band, right? Like they were an established band when we took them on, and that's a little different. But like,
so it's different, yeah.
But they were still like DIY. What they wanted from us is what we do, which is like help us with a merch connect, help front us some money. We basically want people to just like help hook us up with like a place to stay when we come through, maybe help us find some people to tour with. You know, they're DIY as hell. They just record in the studio.
It's a mindset, I think, more than anything. It's like a willingness to grind for this thing that you love.
It's
even also, if you're
it's also, I think, in a way like an ideology or like a political sort of like statement of like, and maybe just like, or maybe not even a political statement, but like a statement of like the rejection of like this consumerist capitalistic sort of way of like creating this thing that generates profit for somebody that isn't the person who's creating it, the person who should own it, right? Like, why the fuck would Sony own music I thought and recorded and made? Like, that's fucked up, right? And I think like DIY is kind of the rejection of that premise as well. And so like, to me, like DIY artists are often just people who are willing to circumvent the music industry and like generating profit for that industry versus like kind of funneling it more directly into the people who are creating the things that they help create, the things that they make, right? Like, if you're paying directly into an independent studio, if you're paying independent artists to make your covers, if you're paying a local engineer in your town to mix your music or whatever, like, that's still fucking cool. That's DIY. You're circumventing these big industries. You're helping keep like small businesses afloat, and you're kind of still finding another way participating that, you know, I think makes it more equitable and spreads kind of like the benefit that comes from releasing music, even if that's not a lot of money. You know, it also spreads community, it spreads support, it helps make things cost less money because you can circumvent expensive options for things. You know, there's a lot to it that I think expands beyond like, do you mix your music for real? Is mastering DIY? Like, mixing and mastering is DIY. Making good music is actually DIY. It can sound cool. It can sound good. It can sound really good.
Yeah.
Like,
well, there was that whole discourse on Twitter like just the other day where somebody was like, this sounds too good. Yeah. It's like, all right. We're over that. That's not what this is about. This is this is a different thing.
Yeah, it's like, it's not about like sounding like shit. Like, that's not.
Yeah.
You know.
It's about trying to do the most with what you have at your disposal.
It's about making it democratized so that you don't have to be rich to make fucking good music that other people can hear, and to build community around shit that you like, and to prop people up that you think matter, and to create platforms for people that you think should have a platform. And, you know, like,
exactly.
It's like Sony's only going to do that for people that can generate ungodly amount of wealth and that they've probably poured an ungodly amount of money into. And then that person, unless you're, you know, one of these kids who came from a wealthy family that I'm sure understands how to have a contractual lawyer look over those sorts of deals, the rest of those people are going to be exploited. And like, ultimately, they're going to generate millions of dollars over their careers for only other people. And like, I think people who are DIY try to circumvent that problem.
Well, and so many of them have seen those horror stories too, and that's kind of like what has driven so many people into it, is seeing like, oh yeah, this person got like absolutely fucked over by a label, and it's like, I want to know that at the end of the day, I own the thing that I made. Yeah, like, I mean, you know, that's... Like, it's just so wild how many people can tell you they've been signed to a label that was bad. Like, another reason why we started Lonely Ghost is because of Lonnie from Nightmare Beach back in the day, signed to a label that fucked them and made them buy their own masters back from her. And what the fuck?
Yeah, so
I actually
basically
didn't know that story.
Back in the day, Lonnie was on a label called, I want to say, Third String Records, and they did have some bigger bands on there, and Nightmare Beach was on there, and she had a lot of issues with the owner of the label. They treated her very poorly, and they fucked her over on merch, and basically they made her buy her masters back, took too much. And so basically after that, she never wanted to work with the label again. But that experience, along with a lot of other people I was meeting who were getting fucked over by all these labels that supposedly were like good, quote unquote, right? They don't exist, most of them anymore. One of them just closed down. They announced they're finally disappearing.
No sleep.
Second time, he'll be back in like 5 years when everybody
gone
forgets.
Forever.
No. He'll have that stock sitting in his garage. He's going to be in his garage in 3 years looking at all these fucking vinyl that didn't sell. Be like, what if I dust it off and start it up again, baby? I I guarantee it. Give him 5 years max. 5 years. He'll be back. He just has to let the heat die down. Everybody knows he scammed him.
Yeah.
That's the thing about music, though, right? Like, if you're around for 5 years, it's like a total turnover. Like, almost nobody is around 5 years. So it's like, you're always going to be able to find a new mark. You just got to wait till your reputation disappears so that you can come back and do it. And that's what he did before.
For sure.
But, like, that was, like, a big thing, too. So, like, that inspired us to be like, what would a label look like that wouldn't steal? Like, that wouldn't be more beneficial to, like, the label itself than the person making the music. Like, how do we structure a label that could make people music? So we started out with a 90-10 split, 90 in favor of the artist.
Okay.
But the 10% meant that Shane and I were spending so much money and we were not able to generate almost any of it back, right? Because we're not selling at scale or anything. It's like Spotify streams on 500 listens. It costs us, $500 to put out the album, and it makes us $5. Like, not a great business model.
That's not a very good return on investment, believe it or not.
So we ended up with like a 70-30, which is kind of like a little bit more, still doesn't actually, we've never actually, I think, broken even yet still, or if we have, maybe 1 year. But like, it makes it a little bit more likely that we can at least like get enough money back to fund the next thing, because now we're working with bands that need thousands of dollars loaned to them, not hundreds. Like if somebody wants to make a round of t-shirts and they want to make vinyl in the same year, they're basically asking us for like $5,000. Well, that's one band. If we put out 8 albums a year and even 2 or 3 of them need that, that's $10,000 to $15,000. Like, who the fuck has that? I just am some guy who works at a job. So is Shane. We're not like, you know what I mean? So it's like, that's where we have to, we had to like try to adjust and figure it out. And like now, part of it is also we just try not to overinvest. Like, we try to invest in things that we think will break even. It doesn't have to make money, but like, to loan out that money, we need to have most of it come back, because there's just only so much you could have, right? So it's like, those are the kind of things that, we've had to work around. But by doing that, every band on our label has made money. Every band on our label has been paid out. And some of those bands have been paid out a lot. So, that's good. And I'm happy about that. And, I think like that's hard also though for people to do, because you almost like, basically like Shane and I try not to overinvest with the idea that like someday if it breaks even, it supports itself, then you just let it do what it needs to do, but like, who can do that indefinitely? And so it's like, I think that's why a lot of people end up fucking collapsing and fucking people over eventually. I don't think it's always intentional. I think they do shit like this and they don't realize you can't invest in 6 fucking vinyl in a year.
No, I think that it is definitely something where it's like, you try and do as much as you can, and then maybe you overplay your hand, and then now you've kind of backed yourself into a corner where you're like, so I'm getting screwed over. I can either screw over the next guy and save my own ass, or, and so it's kind of one of those things where you have to be very careful with trying to walk that line. Yeah.
And a lot of people do. They just fuck off. Like, they'll just fuck it up and they'll just be like, well, gotta wipe my hands of this. I gotta get the fuck out of here. And they do. Yeah. And they do. And like, that's the thing, right? So it's like Shane and I basically, and for anybody who would want to start their own label or continue to invest in more other people's music, or like help people with physicals or whatever, if you're a band, never invest money that you can't consider a loss. You should never spend more money than you can afford to not be paid back at a time. If you are, you're making the wrong decision. It's not going to help you. Like, I don't give a fuck what they tell you on TV about, like, you take a big risk, you get a big reward. Those are rich people telling you that. They lost $1 million of their dad's money, but they can get $1 million more so eventually, right? The rest of us, you have to be like, you have to think about it, right? So like, a lot of bands kill their bands by overinvesting.
You see all these people, whether it's on different platforms of social media or on, TV or whatever, trying to give you business advice, and it's always like the people who had like the biggest like safety net in the world. So it's like, well, that's not advice that the regular person can use. Yeah,
Elon Musk, business genius Elon Musk. Well, the motherfucker couldn't fail. Like, there was no failure. It was just a matter of like what was going to work.
How many times has he technically gone bankrupt? But still, exactly.
So that's the thing with like a lot of bands is like it's like I tell people, even with vinyl, they're like, well, we want to make vinyl. How many monthlies do you have? Well, we had a really good month and we have like 2,000, which is great. That's a lot. That's a lot of people to listen. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But that's not going to sell fucking vinyl. If you make 300 vinyl, you need 20,000 monthlies.
It's transient too, because it's like when you release something, those numbers are going to go up. But it's whether the numbers stay up. That's your issue for longevity. Because like if you just base all of your business decisions based off of the numbers that you get right at release, that's not a number that's really necessarily sustainable.
Exactly it. And like, you know, that's the thing that a lot of people, I think they don't think about it enough, right? Like everybody thinks like, oh, well, if I play shows and stuff, I'll sell these vinyl. Like that's not a guarantee. Even if you have a lot of monthlies who are excited, people who are excited about you and a lot of monthlies for a while, like you said, like sometimes it's more about like, can you trickle these out over 2 years? More so than it's going to be like, whatever you don't sell in that first initial release, you're going to have it in the next 3 months. You're going to have that again in the next 3 months. And then it's, who knows? You know what I mean? So it's like that first year, there's like a diminishing return if it's doing well. And there's like no return if it's not doing well. It just immediately falls flat. You get 30 sales and then fucking nothing, right? So it's like...
And then now you've got this giant crate in your garage that you just can't get rid of.
And $3,000 that you owe, that you didn't make back, you know? Vinyl can make you a lot of money if you can sell it all, but you have to be able to sell it. And like, vinyl's a bad investment if you can't. And a lot of people can't afford vinyl because it's a $22, $25 purchase now. And so that's the other part too, where it's like a lot of people can't invest that kind of money in merch. Like t-shirts maybe because it has some utility to it. Like I buy a lot of band shirts because I'm allowed to wear those at work. And so like basically me buying clothes for work, you know, like that's fine.
It's like most of my wardrobe is band t-shirts because that's just what I wear every day. So it's like, it's the same as going clothes shopping, but you're also like supporting your whereas like I actually have to, this is fun money that I'm investing in buying vinyl or whatever. It's like that's the money that I would be spending on like a vacation or
it's
putting away for retirement. You know,
it's
whatever.
Almost like the difference between buying art for your wall and buying clothes. Right? Like, you're probably going to buy clothes a lot more than you're going to buy art. And you are buying art if you're buying music. But, like, it's kind of the same idea of, like, there's just no necessity to it. It really is just about being like, this is cool, I have this, maybe I like the way it sounds or whatever. But, like, you can stream it for free. You don't have to own a physical copy of music anymore. So it really is a collector's thing. It's, like, something that's, like, very much more of, like, a privilege, I guess. You know? So it's, like... a lot of that kind of merch isn't going to sell as well. You get like maybe 1% to 2% of the people who are going to buy your merch like that. Shirts will do better at shows. Tapes are okay because they're a lower investment for people. But now, you know, I hear people saying they're out of vogue. I don't know. I mean, like, I think it just kind of always is the same thing of like bands that have fans that would buy their cassettes. Their fans are still going to buy their cassettes. And I mean, I don't know.
Well, I always thought too, like, to me, the cassette thing doesn't quite make as much sense because like I think it made more sense like 10 years ago. 10 years ago was kind of like every kid who's into DIY is in college and drives a 90s shitbox that still has a tape deck in it.
Right.
Now the 20-year-old shitbox has a CD player in it. And so it's like if you're going to be doing the same thing, you may as well just exactly.
But here's the thing, like
we talked on the last episode too about like the sine wave of like nostalgia and like things coming back and you know
it's really easy. I can tell you what it is. It's the first generation of people who are buying music that did not experience that audio medium in their own memory. And so like CDs are at that point where people who are 15, that shit is like super old. Like even if your parents were like kind of behind the wave on digital shit, CDs are probably not going to be it for, you know, that's going to be like some, like vinyl was 20 years ago or whatever, you know, like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, and vinyl I think retains a little bit of a different value because it's always been more of a collector's item for a long time. You know, ever since basically like people have been able to buy anything else. But like, you know, it's just, I just think that's like just the way it goes. And, you know, I think it's going to be funny when Zunes start to be like super expensive because people can like get wired headphones into a fucking Zune that doesn't plug into a computer. They're going to have to create an adapter or some shit. Like, that's
going to be amazing.
You know? iPhone, like that iPhone cover I made for that fucking Jeff tape. Like, that's what kids are going to want in 5 years. Or those iPhone 3s, they're going to be trying to buy that shit. You know, that's what's going to happen. I don't know if those could be in vogue, though, because, like, it would be too expensive because, like, a lot of them got trashed and stuff. But, like, that's what's going to be eventually a wave is, like, old tech, I think, in general.
It's going to be something like that,
Old tech, old cell phones, all that shit.
I think that'll be interesting because, I mean, we're already seeing, like, the rise of, like, you know, VHS camcorder technology as an aesthetic for things.
And it's a cool aesthetic.
I think that I think that maybe like the next one would be like, you know, the shitty iPhone 3 camera.
It already coming back.
Maybe not because maybe that's too shitty. But
the Brat cover is fucking 2004 internet aesthetic. It's just that shitty ass digital camera aesthetic. And I just watched this YouTuber who talks about like aesthetics, and they were talking about trying to recreate a Digicam from like 2004. And I'm like, holy fuck.
Okay.
Holy fuck, the shit that I used when I was in high school is like, that's the shit that's like that nostalgia shit now. Oh my God. And they're talking about like the way that it captures light. And they're like, oh, it's so dreamy and beautiful. I'm like, no, that looked like shit when I was a kid. We all used to say, this looks like shit. And it still looks like shit. But, you know, it's funny that it's coming back, and like all that stuff is coming back. I mean, the shit I wore in high school that's what kids think is cool. And I'm like, oh my God, no. Like, obviously, I'm not wearing that shit now. I'm good. But, like, it's funny, you know?
It is, for sure. All right. So I think I think it's probably about time to transition to, like, the second part of the podcast.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you specifically want to mention about, like, the new project or anything else before we move on?
Real quick, I will say, like, Nelson Comes to Visit is out August 23rd. It is what we're calling Sega Wave, which is very poppy. It's a mix of like 80s pop, 90s R&B, and alternative rock music. It's got some FM synthesis, which is the Sega music, chiptune. Just like, it's a really fun kind of weird mix of things. And I think it's a lot poppier and groovier than a lot of the other stuff I've made. And it's worth checking out.
I think that there is a part of it that's definitely like more accessible than like a lot of your previous stuff, for sure. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I was going for that a little bit. but yeah, so, you know, it's coming out in like, I don't know when this episode's coming out exactly, but probably like a month from
It'll
now.
be near the end of the month. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, about a month from this episode it'll be out, and I should have a single coming out called Green Hill on July 30th. So yeah, look out for that.
All right. So moving on to the next part of the episode, this is where we're going to go back and forth and share some tunes by some artists that we think deserve a bit of an extra platform. Yeah. So I'm going to start out with my song. We'll go back and forth, which is going to give you the closer at the end of the episode. So as we kind of like talked about earlier, being the summer, it's very much like festival season. Yeah. And in the last month, I've gone to 2 different festivals, and this first song I found when I went down to Nashville for Jorts Fest, which was a really fun festival that was organized by my buddies in the band Ghost Town Remedy. But one of the sponsors that they had was a vinyl store called Dark Roast Vinyl, and they have a thing that they do where it's a mystery vinyl. It's, I think, I forget if it's $15 or $20, but they take like the regular jacket of the vinyl record and they wrap it in construction paper like a Christmas present or something like that. And then, you know, the like protective sleeve that goes over it. They put that over it, and they put their own little label on the front. You can kind of see it here. This little label here.
Yeah.
And so you just go through, and all they give you is the genre, the year it was released, and for fans of, so like artists that it's kind of similar to.
That's actually
I really like this idea, and I've just gotten into collecting vinyl, so I was like, all right, I'm all in. So this is the record that I picked from that. All I had to go off of was that it was garage slash psych rock, released in 2022 for fans of Mountain Tamer, Spiritual Cramp, and Military Gun.
Okay, that's interesting.
So I'm like, all right,
yeah,
interesting, very eclectic type of thing. I'm like,
yeah, definitely.
But it's a local Nashville act. They're called Glamper, and the album was called Rat Race, and this song is called Lose My Cool.
Cool around you. I only lose my cool around. I only lose my cool around you. Around you. Around you. I never my cool around you. I only lose my cool around. I only lose my cool around you. Around you. Around you. You always catch my glance. What do I do with my hands? You must think I'm a fool. I only lose my cool around you. I only lose my cool around. I only lose my cool around you. Around you. Around you. I lose my cool around. I lose my cool around. I lose my cool around.
That song rips. That's fucking sick.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's very much like kind of that like throwback garagey punk hardcore.
I fucking love that sound, though.
Type of sound. Yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
it's really cool, and it's something that like as I've started buying more vinyl, I've gotten into because it's like that's like stuff that I don't know. I feel like maybe isn't quite as popular, and so you can like kind of find it for cheap at like record shops and stuff like that, and it's really cool.
Cool aesthetics always on those kind of records. Like the
Yeah.
covers are always pretty neat. And like honestly, some of those albums end up being a big deal eventually because some of those bands end up doing really cool shit. Like, you know, a lot of really weird bands have come out of like hardcore punk. You know, it's always fun to collect those.
I think that this album is super neat. Like I said, I think that the like mystery vinyl aspect of it was also really cool because it was like I just bought this thing. I had no idea what it was going to be going into it. I put it on. I'm like, this is fucking sick. This is really cool.
Is it all like that punky or does it get more psychedelic?
There are some like the B side of the record because I haven't actually listened to this on streaming, so I do think of it as like the A side and the B side. But
Right.
The B side does get a little bit more psychedelic, but it's still like more garagey type stuff. I personally
Gotcha.
wouldn't put the psychedelic label on it if I were to do it.
I just wondered, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things that I was thinking when I was reading it. I was like expecting a lot more like psychedelic, reverbed out, like kind of shit.
Something, yeah.
Yeah.
I get it with the vocals a little bit, maybe. I mean, like, that's kind of like a throwback punk sound, really, to me. Like, it almost reminds me of, like, the Misfits or something a little bit.
With all the delay and
like-
stuff like that. Like it's very dry
Yeah.
with reverb, but there's a lot of like delay to give it space. And
Yeah, and it's got that, like, deeper, like, that old 80s kind of punk singing that was sometimes a little bit more, like, melodic baritone shit versus, like,
Yeah.
yelling. Like, the higher, like, Minor Threat yelling shit seemed to come towards the later 80s. You know, maybe, like, a little bit with Henry Rollins even. But, like, you know, a lot of those punk acts had those, like, singers that would be down here. Like, it was, like, weird. You know, it almost came out, like, almost sounded Southern Rocky.
Yeah.
But, like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like that almost like became like the sort of like grunge, post grunge, like Jarl thing
Yeah.
that people were doing.
It
Like,
kinda-
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
the kind of like Creed voice
Yeah.
is I feel like that's like the evolution of that. Is it's like
Yeah.
it lost a bit of the grit and just kind of like became more melodic, and it's the same sort of like
Yeah.
idea.
But yeah, that's a cool sounding
funny.
band.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
they're
that's a cool band, though.
They're awesome. Like I said, they're a Nashville based band.
Glamper, you said?
Glamper, yeah. Like
And what was the album called?
the
you know?
album was called Rat Race,
Rat Race, that's right. Rat
Yeah.
Race by Glamper. Okay.
which was released February 25th of 2022. So it's been out for a couple years at this point. I haven't seen any follow-up stuff, but I looked on their Instagram and it looks like they're still playing shows and doing that whole thing. So I don't know if they're working on a new record or not. I hope so, because this is fucking sick. I'd definitely
That was
listen to
sweet.
it.
I hope so too. I would listen to that. I'm gonna have to look them up when we're done. I'm sure I'm gonna be showing more. I'm sure that I'll.
Yeah.
So
So what do we have up next? What's our next tune gonna be? Here?
I believe this was one of my picks. Okay, so to preface my picks, I picked things from Lonely Ghost just because, I do run the label. I felt like it was appropriate to kind of share some of our artists, and one that's off the label, but we did a tape with them recently. But so the first one I think should be Windows 98 Maze by Analog Heart.
All right. Do you want to give a little bit of background on this before we go into it?
Analog Heart is a sentient computer. They make kind of post-hardcore mixed with electro disco and R&B. They take some influence from the project Zapp and Roger with that like kind of old school vocoder sound to the vocals, which is very cool. They basically show themselves as a computer in person, so they kind of obscure their identity. Very cool project. This song in particular got them signed. It reminds me of like some of like the Swancore shit from back in the day, but like way more interesting, way more fun to listen to.
Yeah.
Not that, all that. I liked Swancore for a time, but like it needed to change, right? Like there was something that needed, and this kind of has a little bit of that sound to it. And fuck Dance Gavin Dance, obviously.
Obviously.
Just saying. But that doesn't mean all that sound sucks. But
yeah.
So like this is an interesting blend of that stuff, and I just think like it's heavy, it's cool. see them live.
That would be, yeah. Is it just them like on stage with tracks type of deal?
A guitar and some backing tracks, I think. Yeah.
Okay. I always think it's interesting going into this song because this was the first single as well, correct, off of this EP?
Yeah, it kind of felt like it had to be. Like, I loved that song when I heard it. It made an immediate impression. Most of the people I showed it to, it was kind of the same way. And it was between that and I want to say probably Wise Unwise, which is what we ended up premiering kind of along with the album. But I thought this was I think we made the right choice with this single. I really love this song.
No, I do too. I just think it's very interesting because you hear all of the descriptors that go into what makes the Analog Heart sound. And then the very first thing that you hear is that like funky slap bass. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's such a different sound than I expected going in the first time. And it's like, it's such a cool little groove, the boop, boop, boop. Boop, 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 boop.
Oh, I know.
And then it's like all this other like you know the synthy stuff comes in. There's like the what is that like just a square wave synth and stuff like that. It's such a neat sound.
I think the cover is actually the little synth they use, if I'm not mistaken. Like that's kind of the setup they're using for that synth, I think.
Oh, okay.
It's I think it's I don't know exactly what the voice is, but it does sound like it's a pretty like a saw type of
like a fairly standard
or a square. I mean,
fairly standard type of like synth sound. It's not something that's like super crazy out of left field. It's not like somebody's making this shit in like Serum, like with all these crazy, you know.
yeah, exactly. But it does have like it's just like the way that it's composed. It just has like a really like it almost sounds like emo guitar at times, and that's why I like it so much. It's like has this like really kind of like twinkly kind of thing that it does. Yeah,
and it does. And then, you get into like the post-hardcore type of section with like the harsh vocals. And it's like, again, like especially if you don't know what you're getting into going in, it's like, that is another like hard left turn. And you're like, what the, but it's, it's extremely well done. So, like the song structure fits really well too,
So, have you heard this song before today?
Yes. Yeah, I've listened to this whole project a couple times.
Were you introduced to it because of us? So, like, was us releasing the song the first time you heard this project or no?
Yes. Yeah, it was.
Okay, so that's really interesting to hear.
When you guys introduced it, yeah.
That's so funny because, like, it's really interesting to hear kind of, like, what somebody who, like, kind of just has to watch what we put out, what that experience is like. Because I never really thought about, like, what's it like to hear the beginning of an Analog Heart song, not knowing what you're getting into when, like, we put out
hearing
so
the process.
Much,
Yeah.
Right, like it's so probably weird for people to hear like such a different set of kind of sounds coming out all the time. Maybe you don't know what you're going to get. I never really, I mean, I guess I kind of think about it, but not like that. It's funny to hear you say that.
It's the same sort of thing with like a lot of the Lonely Ghost artists, like I've kind of like mentioned, is it's like everybody has that little X factor that really like makes them stand out. And I think that, it's like the combination of like the harsh vocals with like the bleepy bloopy kind of synths and then like the like funk bass is like a very like strange group of things to pull from, but they work together extremely well like when they do it.
Yeah, I agree. Like Coco is doing stuff that like I don't have the mind or the musical proclivities to make that. Right. Okay. And so like anytime I hear something from a musician, not that I think I can make everybody's music. That's not at all how I mean it. I'm not talented like that. But what I mean is like
that anybody would
when I hear something I wouldn't have imagined, right? Like something I would have thought of myself, right? Like when I hear a combination of something like, whoa, what a fucking good idea. Like, this is one of those times where I was like, that works so fucking well. And like, not at all what I would have thought, and it's not even that off the wall. It has a certain accessibility to it that's kind of almost like harkens back to kind of like that late 2000s, early 2010s kind of synthy hardcore era that like Asking Alexandria came out of, and like even Bring Me the Horizon was a part of. You know what I mean? Like some of those bands,
that's sort of like pseudo crabcore, kind of like where
crabcore.
Where they were like they had like the breakdowns, but they also had like the like type of synth sections and stuff. Yeah.
But it's like a totally different style of music that the synth is pulling from. you know, and like kind of the music and the songs are pulling from in general. It's like a different influence, which is cool.
Yeah.
You know, I love that. I love when like something's like made very unfamiliar that's kind of familiar.
I like that. I like that wording where it's like it's familiar but unfamiliar at the same. I like that. That's cool.
Thanks. Yeah, that's kind of like my philosophy on it. You know, I try to find that kind of those bands always stick out to me. Like I tend to like that.
All right. So my next song, the first time that you and I met in person was at Coachella, like a couple of weeks ago as of recording this. And one of the bands that played there is going to be my next pick. They're called Riot Course. They're from Ypsilanti, Michigan. And they are really cool. They're like this like punk emo shoegaze kind of thing. I think of it a lot more punky, but they identify with all of these labels. And this song is called Best Kept Secret. It was really interesting because like being so close to Detroit, they have almost definitely played at a show that I have been to because it was like I had never heard their name, but then they played their first song. I'm like, wait, I've definitely heard this song before somewhere. And it's like they're not.
That's
like,
how that whole scene works.
Exactly. And so it was really cool. I wonder what these guys are going to be like. And then I'm like, wait, what? Hold on. So
yeah, that whole scene, Michigan, the Detroit and like Ypsi scene has always kind of been a little bit more like, it's always been like that. I don't know how to describe it. Like I was up there like even more than 10 years ago going to shows up there, and like the Ypsi and Detroit scenes were kind of like a lot of the same characters came through if they were willing kind of thing. You know, you got familiar with certain bands.
You see the same names come through time and time again.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because I wasn't familiar with the name, but it's like I heard the song and immediately my ears perked up. Like my first thought was, is this a cover? Do I know the song because it's a cover? And then I'm like, no, this is an original song. And so anyway, this is from that same project. That project is called Skin Deep, which was released in November of 2022. But the song that I'm actually going to play is a different one. This is called Best Kept Secret.
Place anymore, no. This
Yeah, that's
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
sick. What was that song called? Skin Deep, you said?
Skin Deep is the name of the album. This song is called
Oh,
Best
name of
Kept
the album.
Secret. Yeah.
Best kept, that would make sense. That was what she was or they were singing.
Yeah.
Great vocalist. Definitely reminds me of like 2000s ish, kind of like punk a little bit. Like a lot of the shows I went to back when I was like a teenager, you know, like
Yeah.
mid 2000s, kind of like those heavier, but they were still considered like punk bands, I guess. But
Yeah,
that was.
I'm thinking of a band, but I can't come up with the name right
I had
now.
the same thing.
Yeah.
I kept trying to think of like I can't like. There's a certain it was like the way they were kind of oscillating between like the faster, punkier, and kind of like the more grungy sort of like sound. There's a band that used to do that a lot. I've seen them several times, and for the life of me, I can't think of who it is.
I
But
keep
either way,
wanting,
it's a sick band.
I keep wanting to say AFI, but I feel like that's wrong.
No, and it's not quite Bayside.
No,
It's
but
like not because they're like a little bit too like melodic or whatever, but like not quite. I don't know. I saw all those like old punk bands. Like they would be like the bands that played with a band like NoFX, if that makes sense.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It was like
yeah.
the opener for that band kind of thing, and like those were usually the bands I was there for. So like to be fair,
Yeah.
but you know. That feels like a million years ago now. I can't remember all those names.
But yeah, it's like one of the things that I really like about this one is like that bass tone is so fucking killer, and the way that they like break down to like just the bass during like the first part of the verse it's like that groove, and then it's like one of the other things that I think is really interesting too that this got me thinking about is the fact that the first verse, a lot of it, like there's kind of this background bed of like guitar feedback, and that's something that you don't get nearly as much in like a lot of modern music. And I wonder if part of that has to do with a lot of people using modelers and just like plugging straight into like an interface or plugging straight into like a Kemper or something like that, because like
you could.
But
you still get that, honestly. You can still get that feedback.
You
I've done it on accident.
Yeah, you can. I've done it on accident too. But it's like it feels like it doesn't happen like as naturally as often. Mm-mm. And so I'm wondering if like the switch to like digital processing has kind of like made that sort of thing go out of vogue a little bit with like newer generation stuff.
I think it depends, because I think that's kind of why shoegaze is becoming like having a big moment, kind of, is because they're starting to bring some of that noise back into music a little bit,
that
like rock music kind of. But like, no, I know what you mean, and like, I get what you're saying. Like that would be interesting to hear, because it's less likely to happen, or it's less likely to that, you know, somebody's like tuning up for a band and they hear that feedback, and you know the drummer starts playing something and they hear something in it, or you know what I mean? Like like, I mean, a lot of people still record in rooms and stuff, but there's probably, you know, a lot of people do reamping. So like you might record clean and they run it through the amp after the fact. Yeah. And then, you know, so that they can mess with the tones and control it better and like stack it and stuff. And so, you know, like that could be a part of it. Yeah. It's a little bit more technical, I think, recording now to get that high quality sound that people expect versus like bedroom recordings now. If you listen to like old like Census Fail albums or something from back in the day, they sound like shit. Yeah. Bedroom recordings sound better than them. Yeah. You know, like, but
another thing that I think about this is like listening to it, it does sound, and I mean they can, if they happen to see this episode, confirm or deny, but it does happen to sound to me like it maybe was recorded in a room all together, because like there's just something about the performances that, and they sound almost exactly the same live too. When I saw them, that was like a big thing that I was like, all right, these guys have, you know,
the drum sound live, like you can kind of hear that it's all happening together. Yeah. Not that, you know, I don't necessarily do that, so I'm not saying that that's like better, but you can hear, in this case especially, it has that sound too of like 2000s band in a room kind of music too, where I think you kind of almost have to have it if it's going to be good or work. You know, or if they weren't in a room together, they figured it the fuck out. So good for them. I'm wrong, and they figured out how to make it sound cool. You know,
the grooves are dead on tight, but it doesn't sound like metronome dead on. It sounds like a band that's been playing together for a long time. That
played that song 100 times before they recorded it.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So what's our next tune going to be? This is going to be your next one.
Oh, Trash Talk Therapy by the Marrier, featuring featuring Old Phone.
Two
It's a
Nico
little bit of a
artists this
twofer.
time. Yeah. Do you want to give a little bit of background on this one too?
Sure. Yeah. So the Marrier is a single person, Jake Stevens. He basically records like a decent amount of the instrumentals, and then from there he approaches other DIY artists. He asks them to contribute various aspects of the songs, guitar, vocals, always vocals, but sometimes guitars, drums, all kinds of things. And he makes like these really cool songs. So this particular song, he teamed up with Gregory, known as Old Phone, and they make hyper emo music, which is like a blending of emo and hyper pop together. And they have a new album coming out in September. So, and it's really like hyper emo. Like I think people are really gonna like it. But basically they teamed up together. You can kind of hear both their styles in the song, which I think is really cool because the Mirror has kind of like that surfy, beachy, fast, kind of gothy but brighter guitar that you can tell Jake, was influenced very heavily by The Cure, which he'll tell you. And then you can hear Old Phone's kind of like hyper pop sound in there, which I think is really sick.
Don't think I wanna talk to you anymore. I wanna see you tipsy, me
When this song came out, it was a very like full circle moment for me because I was introduced to Old Phone's music when Jake was on the podcast like a year ago. So
Really?
so it was really interesting that it was like, oh yeah, he introduced me to this artist and now they're like doing a collaboration. So that was very interesting specifically for me because that was my introduction into Gregory's music.
Yeah, an Old Phone. I've been friends with Gregory for several years now, which is crazy actually. And we're like really good friends. So we talk like all the time, sometimes a week and stuff. So like, I've kind of followed Gregory since before they even did Old Phone. And I kind of knew Jake tangentially for a long time because he floated around the Cleveland scene and he had been in the Sonderbombs and then kind of was just like looking to do more like a little bit weirder music, which kind of sent him in my direction.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was cool to see them start to like do stuff together. Especially because I think like Jake does actually fit really well into not quite the hyperpop scene, but like tangentially or like kind of like, adjacent to it. I think he kind of does have a space there.
In the periphery of that area.
Yes.
Yeah, he's
right.
definitely, and you can hear that on other songs too, off of this album. Like, I forget the name of it, but the one with Eichlers and Palette Knife has a lot more of that, like hyperpop influence as well.
The mid outdoors. The mid
outdoors. Yeah.
I love that song too. And actually, I wanted this song to be the other single. So I wanted it to be the Mid Outdoors and this one because I thought that those were like the catchiest songs.
Oh, okay.
But we went with ISO, which is honestly just like so good. We had to, wait a minute. No, it was supposed to be ISO and this song, and then we went ISO in the Mid Outdoors instead. That's what it was.
Okay.
But and Mid Outdoors was a good single too. Like that's the thing about this album is like it's almost like an album where like I could have made I Lost My Twitter a single. I could have picked almost any song on this album and made it a single. Like
I think
Jake has that quality.
Yeah, and it's also very interesting. There are very few artists that like I feel like I hear one note and I know exactly who it is, and Jake is one of them. Just like I don't know if it's the guitar tone or if it's like
it's the guitar tone.
It's the guitar tone, but also like the chord voicings that he uses. I feel like sound very uniquely like him, which is really really interesting to me.
They do, but like you heard the new album, right? That I sent you.
Which one?
Did you hear the one that didn't come out yet from me? Nelson Comes to Visit. You heard it?
Yeah.
Right? I sent it to you. Okay, so you heard the song he does guitar on?
Yeah.
Halloween City. Like, even though that's not in like the same chord structures or whatever, it's still just immediately.
Yeah, that tone
sounds like fucking Jake. You know what I mean? Like as soon as I heard that, it's like something he's doing with that guitar. I don't know. Like, he has like this really crazy tone on it.
He was telling me that part of it is the fact that the main guitar that he plays is a semi-hollow or maybe like a full hollow body electric, and so it gives it more of that like rounded kind of tone. Whereas like a lot of solid body electric guitars tend to be like a little bit more angular sounding, I guess. I don't know if that's a good word for it, but it's like a bit more of like a woody rounded tone. Yeah,
I know exactly what you mean because I only record with an acoustic electric and it's a nylon string.
Oh,
everything
really?
you've ever heard is an acoustic. Yeah, I like the hollow sound to it. I think it sounds warmer and I think it sounds like a neat fuzz to it, kind of. And so like I get it. Like I like running that through like amp filters and stuff. It brings like a beachier. I like the beachier. Mine is like more of like a stormy beach, and Jake is like if it was a sunny beach.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I like
that's kind of how
analogy.
I view us a little bit, actually. Yeah.
And the way that this song is put together, where it's kind of got like, it starts out as one thing, and then there's kind of like the ska groove that it goes into, and then there's like the hyper pop thing. It's again very interestingly structured. That just this entire
Jake is like a genius with that.
Yeah.
Like Jake is just like, the way he composes songs, he's like super prolific too. He actually writes like a lot of music. He just like, I think he cuts some of it or he reworks a lot of it over time. And, obviously they evolve a lot because he involves so many people in like every song having a different artist is like really an accomplishment in its own right. But like, he's a pretty prolific artist. He works very quickly, and it's kind of impressive because of how tight everything he makes is and how like much is going on in his songs. The fact that he's like ripping those songs in like a couple days each is like wild.
Yeah, that's insane to me. I mean, do you know, because I feel like this is something that I didn't ask him when he was on the podcast, if he happens to prompt anything one way or the other, like, oh, well, I sort of have this sort of topic for this song, or is it more just like, I have this instrumental, do what you're gonna do with it?
I've worked with Jake on, I think, 3 songs now, and like, so like the first one he handed it to me, he's like, I like this song, but I'm about to fucking cut it. And I was like, well, maybe I could give it a shot. And he was like, all right. And so that's how I ended up on that one, because he wanted to get rid of it. And I was like, let's try it. If you don't like it, let's cut it. And he liked it. So like with that one, he gave me nothing.
Okay.
I had heard the rest of the songs and I went for it. The second one, pretty much, he was like, hey, I have this song. You know, I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. I did the first verse and the chorus. Jazz jumped on. She did that, and we kind of just riffed off of each other again. Yeah. Like Jazz and I just kind of did our own thing.
That one turned out fucking sick.
Thank you. I love that song. And like Jazz and I kind of did our own thing, you know, and again, he didn't really give us much of anything. He didn't really tell us what the album was about. I knew the name of it and I heard the songs just because of the nature of, you know, what it was. And then same with this one. I knew it was called I Hope I'm With My Cats When the Flood Comes. I did the art for it. I did the album art for it.
Oh, okay.
And I heard the songs as they developed. I ended up doing one with him. And again, it just so happens that a lot of people were singing about like different aspects of their relationships, like romantic relationships or like interpersonal relationships. And a lot of those were like breakups and stuff. Mine was like kind of the opposite. Yeah. And all of us managed to talk about our cats because cats was in the title, it seemed like. So, you know, I think we nailed it. And, you know, Jake just kind of rolls with it. But it's weird because like Jake almost has like this way of like tapping into the right people. He like knows, he understands like innately the people he's working with, and he knows who to ask to do what, and he knows kind of like without knowing what they'll do, he knows that they're gonna fit.
Yeah,
like it's really interesting.
I feel like there's got to be, and even if it's not conscious, there's got to be some sort of like almost social engineering aspect to it, because it's like
he hears something.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, going back to the other one that I had mentioned too, is it's like I never would have thought Palette Knife and Eichler's on the same Marrier song. I'm like,
when I saw that, I was like, what?
It's like him with one or the other makes sense to me, but the two of them together on that same track, I was like, that's but it works really, really well, you know?
Well, and that's the thing with Jake. It's like he figures it out. I don't know. And like the other thing is like I think he does a little bit of this thing where he'll kind of like be like, I think I want to have you on a song. And then he'll send you like 5 songs. And you'll be like, oh, I like these 2.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? And so it's like a certain level of like, I think you kind of pick, but he'll usually come to you and kind of say like, these are the songs I think you'd sound good on. And sometimes it's just like, he'll come to me like, I'm about to throw this shit out. Like, you know, it depends on the day, I guess. It depends on the song. But, you know, like, I think a lot of the time it's like a mix of like, he knows kind of that also just who will fit into his style. Like, I think he's good at recognizing like artists that do a lot of improvisation and kind of like they mix up their music and switch things up a lot. He does the best with those kind of artists on those types of songs where like, if you notice the more emo songs, he kind of pulled from people that make more traditionally structured music or that aren't doing as many change-ups throughout, but then he'll work with Caleb from Hey I Love You on 5 songs to do drums and shit. Or, you know, like he and I will work on something where it's like, depending on what song you give me, I love to bounce around. So like that changes kind of like what the song, you know what I mean? Like it kind of depends on where in the stages they are too. Cause like some of the songs you hear like have full vocals on them and you're like, oh, that's cool. And I hear what they're doing here.
And then
so
there's
kind
other
of like,
songs
it gives
that
you
are
a bit
more
of an
just
idea.
kind of a vibey song that have like some lyrics here and there. Yeah.
And then, you know, he has songs with rappers on them where it's like Superdestroyer. I mean, I've had rappers on my songs too, so I guess it does kind of fit, but like it wouldn't be the first thing you thought of. You know what I mean? But like it works because like he's kind of picking people that do somehow have an overlap.
Yeah, for sure.
He's really talented at that. Like Jake is, and he's really talented at getting people to give a fuck enough to turn features in, because that's so hard to get people to turn shit in. Not because like they're assholes, but just in the sense of like everybody's busy and usually they end up having to prioritize their own songs.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
No, that compilation that I was talking about putting together, the very first one that I've ever done, that was something that I learned was I was like, all right, I've got like 15 people who have said yes to this. And it's like by the end we had 5 total songs, because it's like people either forgot and the deadline got too close, or you know they're like, oh,
Classic.
well, actually, I started working on my first full-length album, so I can't just dedicate the time to doing this other project or, this, that, or the other thing. Things come up, and eventually, stuff gets dwindled down. So yeah, having to work with, setting that framework of having a feature on every single song is kind of like a daunting task, I would feel like, that gets pulled off very well.
It's a choice, and he is like one of the only people I think could pull that off. Like, it's just his personality too. He's such a go with the flow guy. You almost have to be to get that many people to contribute to an album without losing your fucking mind. Just like in the sense of like the direction they decide to go. Like, he hands me the song, I'm doing all this fucking auto-tune bullshit on there to like make it like this poppier thing, and like I think it's fun, and I'm doing my own little experiments, and he just lets me.
Yeah.
I like the song I made, don't get me wrong, but it's like I'm trying things out that are different because Jake kind of handed me something I wouldn't usually make, and a lot of people I think would freak out hearing like auto-tune on a song that doesn't necessarily, or like all my added little like and the singing
the little
pieces and
stuff,
and all that kind of stuff, and it's like a lot of people I think would be like, I don't know if I like this, but Jake is like, oh, this is sick, like it's just like he can appreciate, like he really is on board to like have that experience.
Yeah, and
I think that that's like hard to do when you are as talented as he is, and you're capable of making songs that you want to make.
For sure. No, I think that that's just like a very interesting aspect of that whole project that like not a lot of people can probably relate to.
Yeah, 100%. But sorry, we should probably go to the next song. I'm gonna make this episode so fucking long. I'm sorry.
It's all good. It'll probably end up being like a regular episode length, but it'll just take me way longer to like cut everything down.
Even worse, man. I'm so sorry. We can try to like, if you want, we can kind of get it going.
No. We're good. I like having long episodes, and also it's before the first of the month, so I'll have plenty of time to edit this. Awesome. My next song is one that got submitted directly to me through my email. If you watching at home are, if you make music and are interested in submitting it to the podcast, freshfindspod@gmail.com, hit my line. I might feature it on an episode. This was actually one that got introduced or that got submitted like back in February, and I just never I felt like I didn't have the right guest to feature this song on, and then I'm like, all right,
I'm glad I'm the guest, honestly. Like that. I love when people say shit like that.
So this is a solo project called Flower Candy from St. Louis, Missouri, and it's like a hyper pop rock sort of thing. This song leans more like rock, but there's like a couple songs that like lean more like ska a little bit, does like all these different things, and I think it's really neat. So this song is called Yes, I Adore. God damn, I fucking love that song.
What was it? Something Candy, right?
Flower Candy.
Flower Candy. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so Flower Candy, and that song was called
Yes, I
Outside Your
Adore.
Door?
Yeah.
Yes, I Adore. Okay.
It does sound
Yes,
like
I Adore.
outside your door when you first.
Granted, also with the way that we're listening, it washes out a little bit. But like, I really like that. Make sure to send me a link to that. That's
for sure.
Really awesome. It has like this kind of like I said, it almost like has a little bit of an alt country sound to it, but it also has like that throwback like indie rock, like pop indie. That sound.
That was kind of what I was thinking. Is it's like the first name that I think of is kind of like OK Go kind of deal. Not quite,
with like a little bit more like juice to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's
got that like pop rock, radio rock kind of like sound to it, but it's like there's this extra little X factor with like that guitar lick is just so much fun. Like you said,
like that was honestly like very, very sick. Are they on streaming or is that?
Yeah, they're on all the streaming services. I don't know if they're on Bandcamp. I haven't looked. But
I mean, depending on how big they are, if they're like a really independent like little band, they're probably on Bandcamp. Yeah. Usually. I know some people skip that, but I don't know. Yeah, that was sick. Okay.
I also think it's really interesting, like, this song I feel like is probably the most accessible of theirs, but like it's got the format shifted vocals in the second verse, which kind of, gives you that like hyper pop feel a little bit. And then like the drums are especially like where the groove gets really interesting, especially near the end.
Especially that second verse where it starts to get like really like dancey. That was like really nice.
Yeah. It's
I'm trying to find this band. Actually, I'm trying to find see if they have a Bandcamp. I found them on SoundCloud.
I was gonna say I'm not seeing anything on Bandcamp. I can look and just try and send it to you later.
They're on SoundCloud. I found them on SoundCloud at least. I'm sure I could find them from here at least.
Yeah.
Are they on Twitter?
I don't know. They didn't
IG
give
or something.
me they didn't give me a whole lot of background information in their email. They just kind of said like, it's a solo project from St. Louis. They were talking about like trying to break into doing like more engineering and producing type of stuff. So I would have to imagine that they're on social media somewhere, and I'm definitely going to tag them in the post for this episode when it goes out.
I was going to say, tell them to reach out to me. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah.
Always willing to hear more of that.
Oh, sure. Boy.
Just saying. Anyway, all right, so I'm assuming mine is next.
Yeah.
Let's see. What is next? Oh, yeah, okay, this one's a fast one. It's a fun one. So this is a little bit of a throwback Hey I Love You sound to the song. Hey I Love You is a band out of Montana. They have been accused of being a fifth wave emo band. I think that they are not quite that, really. I think that they're accidentally sometimes an emo band, and they're much more like a J-rock band or something probably. But like either way, they do a lot of cool stuff. Their new album is fucking crazy, and they borrow a lot from like a lot of different genres, a lot of video game type aesthetics, but they also have been diving deeper and deeper into like 2000s like screamo and emo. And so like this song Sunsets, after the band, I'm putting quotes here, because by band, it was just Caleb for the first two EPs. After that, Caleb actually made Hey I Love You a band and brought in other members. So like the new album and their first full-length Psychokinetic Love Songs, those were full band, but before that it was just Caleb. And in this case, on this song, for our split that we put out, it was mostly just Caleb on it. And it kind of sounds like old Hey I Love You a little bit, which is why it sounds a little bit like more like digi screamo kind of thing going on. And it's just like a really fun Caleb-y song. And I love Hey I Love You as a band. I think they're all great when they play together, but this is just like, I don't know, it's fun to have like this fast little like 50-second.
This was from that Jeff split, right?
Yeah, the split with Mount Oriander, Topioid Creatures, two other bands that you should absolutely check out. Topioid Creatures put out an album called Metaphysics, some hotline.
Metaphysical Tech Support Hotline.
There we go, Tech Support Hotline, yes. And
we just talked about it last episode.
Yeah, it's so good. Right, yes, with 95 Corolla, right? Yeah. Nice shirt, by the way. But yes, that's right. Very, very cool band. Very nice people. Check them out. Check out Mount Oriander. That's Keith. Used to be Empire. I Was Alone the Estate. Owns Count Your Lucky Stars Records.
All right.
Yeah, check them out. Yeah, so like when Caleb made it, they had given us like "Hey, I Love You" had like a full band song, but they were like, "Yo, we kind of want to use this for our album." So Caleb was like, "I'm just gonna rip something by myself. I hope you guys are okay with the fact that like I kind of did this like really like moody sort of introspective like acoustic thing at the end I was going for," and I was like, "Yeah, dude, like say I love you. Just do what the fuck you want, like you know, like." Yeah, that's what I would expect. Just something to throw me off, you know? But yeah, I just love that song. It has great energy. It's pretty simple. I love Caleb when he's just fast as shit screaming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because he's also in Flyover States as well, correct?
Yeah, as the bass player. He's the bass player of Flyover States, and that's more of like Gunnar is the primary songwriter more so of that. And Gunnar was in Rookie Card, and Gunnar like right now is playing in Hey, I Love You to help out.
So I knew that you were going to play this song, so I almost chose a Flyover State song, and then I was like, let's not do two Caleb projects on one episode. We could spread it out a little bit. But
Flyover States is great though.
They are absolutely. They're definitely going to get featured on a future episode.
Hell yeah.
One of the things that I was going to say though is it's interesting listening to this many different Lonely Ghost artists back to back, because I'm noticing another through line that I didn't really notice before, which is that everybody fucking grooves. Like everybody's got these different, like, they've all got their different ways of doing things, and some songs are like harder, some are softer, you know, whatever. But it's like everything kind of has like a weird danceability to it, no matter like what style it is. And I think that that's really interesting.
We've kind of been like, I say it a lot, and like I'm half serious, but like I kind of think Lonely Ghost is really just like a pop label, like a really weird pop label. Like my next album, like the album I was gonna put out this summer was called Weird Pop. It's coming out next summer now. Okay. But like it came because I kept talking about the label and trying to describe it, and it kept boiling down to like we're kind of like a weird pop label. I don't know that we're really like even a rock label or really like an electronic label, and we're not like an emo label, and we're not necessarily a punk label. Yeah, I mean, we have Discussing the Sun and fucking Nelson on our label, you know, and like Holy Kerouac is not punk. It's like maybe a little bit, you know, like borrows from the Wonder Years a little bit, but not really. Like, you know, Mars, he's not really like super punk per se. Like, I don't know. Like, it's kind of like all boils back down to like we all take influence from like pop music and then filter it through like these other avenues. So it's kind of feels like people do kind of recognize that like they want people to move to their music a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think that that's really interesting, but it was just a neat through line for me to notice kind of like in real time, you know. I'm also curious, like, how did this split come together? Whose idea was it? Like, what's kind of like the backstory there?
So I'm a big fan of Topiary Creatures and obviously Hey, I Love You, but I talk to Caleb all the time, so it's not like it's necessarily like, you know, I gotta like reach out to him to do something per se, but like, you know, Caleb and I have like done some covers and stuff together in the past. Like Caleb and I both like to make weird music. We both move fast. It's kind of fun. So I thought, you know, Topiary Creatures had kind of wanted to do a split with maybe like Hey, I Love You and I. And so I kind of started organizing that because I knew we all kind of were going to be releasing albums originally around the same time when we were going to put it out. So I guess I kind of was responsible, but like we all kind of talked about it.
Sure.
And then Keith from Mount Oriander had mentioned to me around the same time, like, I would love to do a split with Hey, I Love You. And I was like, well, if you're willing to do a split with me and Topiary Creatures also, we do have a split that we're trying to work on. Yeah. So like, you know, it kind of worked out. But then Keith's like really close friend who he recorded like almost all of his music with, I'm pretty sure. He passed away. I don't really know like the circumstances around it, but I know that was hard. So like that got kind of delayed in that regard. Hey, I Love You ended up, you know, like kind of like going on tour, doing some other things. They started working on this new album, you know, that kind of got deferred. Topiary Creatures and I were the ones who probably had the songs done the soonest. And then we were just kind of like figuring it out. But then the art never quite clicked. And we were talking about MySpace a little bit because our names almost spelled Tom. And we were like, Tom, MySpace. And then like, they're kind of like talking about MySpace a little bit. Yeah. We realized like, oh, most of us fucked with MySpace except for Caleb because he's like, you know, a baby comparatively. But like, it kind of just grew from there. And then like, I ended up doing all the art for that too. Because I had a hard time finding somebody who like, not that I couldn't find an artist to do it at all, but not really like what I think we were thinking of.
Got the vision.
And not on the timeline that we ended up being on with things keep getting moved around. So I was just like, I would like to give it a try and see what I could do. And then like, I recreated those MySpace profiles literally from scratch. I did every single thing layer by layer, matching text and all of it to recreate it. And
that's
like,
insane.
It's fun. I actually had a good time with it, you know, but like, it was a lot of work. There's a few things where if you really were to compare, you'd notice that like, oh, the texture on the player is like slightly different.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't perfectly match it without like being
you made a few different variants too, right? For you,
I made a profile
made 4
page
different
for all
variants
of us.
for everybody.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious.
So originally I thought we were all going to be publishing our own singles and that it wasn't going to be able to be released on streaming as a split.
Yeah.
And so I was like, everybody would have a single cover that's cohesive, that kind of, you know, makes it clear what it is. And that's why I did that. And then I ended up needing to because Count Your Lucky Stars had a way to do it with their distributor because they have like a higher end distributor than we do, like a more professional. You know, we're a little bit more DIY still on that part. But yeah, so it worked out. But like, that's why I did that. I'm so glad I did it. I thought it was cool. I ended up doing the tape layouts too. And I went with like this iPhone layout with like the name etched into the back, like people used to do when they first started getting iPhones. Yeah. And like, I did all the tape layout stuff. So I had a good time with it. I mean, whether it was necessary, I don't know, like probably not, you know, but I thought I like cool art.
Yeah,
art grabs me. Art gets me to listen to music, you know?
That's definitely like, I feel like an underrated aspect of like putting out music is there's definitely music that I have discovered solely because I just went, that looks cool. I'll check it out.
That's so much music I've discovered in my life. It's like, that album cover looks like something I'm willing to spend money on.
And I'm sure that there's great music that I've missed out on because the art was terrible. And so
that's one of the most disappointing things in the world when the art is either terrible and the album's good or the art is excellent and the album's bad, which is the sadder tragedy. Because I can just ignore the album artwork most of the time, but like if you have like banger album artwork and your music sucks, like the album just sucks, it's like
the worst.
Sucks isn't even the right word, just not my taste. Doesn't feel like that matches the aesthetic. Because like sucks is usually not the case, right? Like it's just not my taste. But like that's such a bummer.
Yeah,
that's such a bummer.
For sure. All right, so my next song is a new tune by a band called Fox Cult. May have heard of them around, yeah. So they are from Seattle, Washington. I would say that they're kind of like on the border between like hard rock and metalcore. Some of the stuff that they do is kind of like more metalcore. Some of the stuff that they do is like a little bit more radio rock. This one I feel like is more on the radio rock side. But this song is called...
The stuff I heard from them was... a little bit more, I would say, like radio rock friendly.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like sometimes they tip over, but I feel like most of the time they kind of like try to walk that line. Yeah, so this song is called Gemini 4.
Break before the end when everything you wanted goes to die. Lost in things you never dreamed, it's blinded to my eyes. I felt the path of most resistance and watched the way with fleeting thoughts. There was never anything to hold on to, and I don't know what brought me back to you. And echo is still so loud.
this is just reminding me that like my childhood is so cool to these kids that just barely missed it right now. Like that sound. If I was in 2004, 2006, 2007, I would have had a fucking Fox Cult shirt on, and I would have seen that band 10 times already. You know what I mean? Like, and they still rip. They sound good, but like it definitely has that throwback sound that's like they nail it. It reminds me. I wrote down Seosin. Yeah. I don't know if you ever heard that band. But like when they would get a little heavier, that's who they sound like, kind of, that singing. It kind of sounds maybe not as much, but like who's that other singer that could do that? Like really nice high register. There was Circus Survive, but they never got as heavy. But like the singing reminds me a little bit of Circus Survive actually. You know, really nice. Like really like impressive.
There's one specific band that I'm kind of like thinking of, but also like blanking on the name. They really have like that very like anthemic, like very like anthemic type of voice. And I do like the direction that they went on this one. I believe it's mostly the guest vocalist, who is Tom Weaver of a band called Casey that I'm not familiar with, but they were the guest vocalist on there, who I think were doing like more of the harsh vocals.
That was good too.
And they sounded so sick. That's probably my favorite part of this song, is when it gets into like that like heavier stuff. I saw you kind of
really tight
perk up a little bit there too. It's like there's like really good technique, because it's like I love when it's got that harshness but also like clarity to it as well. Because like there are some people who do that, but it's like you can't quite like understand what they're saying here or there. And you know that's a common thing for people who don't listen to like metal vocals very often. They'll hear any of that and not know what it is. But it's like, you know, you listen to enough like harsh vocals in music, you get to be decent at understanding what they're saying. But some people still just like can't quite enunciate in that same way, you know?
That's a band that like will play like really big shows, like you know, within a couple of years. You know what I mean? Like they have that sound that's like approachable and like it's, you know, it's there. Like they already, like they have that sound for sure.
I already see a lot of people on Twitter talking about them all the time.
We put them on a playlist recently too.
Yeah, I think that they're like on the precipice of like getting to that next level of like starting to play those,
I've been seeing
those
their name
bigger
around
venues
a
and
lot.
stuff. Yeah. And they've got a new project coming out this month too. It comes out on the 19th. So it'll be out probably just before this episode comes out. So if you like what you heard, there's probably a full, I believe it's an EP to check out if you want to hear more.
Let's see. So my next one was, Motorola Razr by Cheen. This is also a very short one.
Over my mind, got the number dialed in and I'm rehearsing my lines. I'm like, just give it a try, no time to decide, just feels right. Sitting right next to me, pulling on my heartstrings. How do I set the scene back when it started? Once you start seeing the glow, it's already out of control. Just fan the flames to grow. Stare into your eyes, knowing you got the same look. Got me hypnotized, hanging off of your fish hook. I'm swimming upstream, just hoping to be the one that you let cook. I don't like this class, but you're making it worth it. I know you forget all your pencils on purpose. I know that you think attaching labels is worthless, but if we're so in sync, maybe you'll be my girlfriend. I can't take my thoughts off you. There's something about the things you do. Illuminate the room, a light bulb breakthrough. I can't shake you. I need a way to breach these walls. I need a couple more missed calls. Fly in the lecture hall, but your ringer was on and the sound of the song set it on. I gotta ask, what song is playing on your phone? I wanna take it, use it as my ringtone. I never knew that me
song whips ass.
Oh my god, dude, they write
Every time.
the best hooks.
Yeah, they're like one of the catchiest. Like they're just a pop. Like they're a pop band. They're not just a pop band, but like they're a pop band that like really is doing a lot of other stuff. But they make the catchiest fucking music.
Yeah.
Like you can hear a Cheem song once and it'll be stuck in your head, and if you don't know who the band is, you'd be like, "What the fuck is that?" for like the rest of your life.
It really
You
is
know what
like
I mean?
it's one of those things where like I swear every single off of this I was like, all right, and this is gonna be stuck in my head for a week, and it's like this entire EP is so hooky, but to me I feel like this project was where they really like nailed down their sound. Like I've been listening
can see it.
to Guilty Pleasure. I bought the CD at Fochella, and so I've been listening to that in my car recently, and it's like it's really good, but it's like I feel like all of this is just like next level. All 5 of these songs.
I know what you mean. It's definitely so. In a way, I think that Cheem reinvents themselves a lot more than people give them credit for.
Okay.
I think that they always have elements of this music in their albums, but like I view their first like LP, maybe it wasn't the first one, but like Downhill, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was the name of the album, I'm pretty sure, or maybe it was Cheem TV. Was the name of the album.
Let me
I can't
check.
remember.
Oh fuck.
been a long time.
Yeah. God damn it. So Tidal does a really annoying thing that I'm just gonna bitch about for a second, where like some artists have multiple profiles and it's like all their like newest stuff is on like one profile and like all their older stuff is on another one.
Yeah.
It
was called Downhill and
Yeah.
Cheem TV. Those are both albums. That's why.
Yeah, okay.
But I think Downhill was the LP it was. So like Downhill is more of like an emo album. Fucking Guilty Pleasure is more of a pop punk album.
Yeah.
And Fast Fashion is more of a new metal album. And like I don't even know if they've ever really stated it that way, but like that's kind of how I see it.
Sure. I think it's interesting to me because like they've definitely always had the new metal aspects of it, at least to me. I mean, between rap verses and stuff like that. And I feel like there was even like some scratching on like a lot of their earlier stuff too.
Well, so Sky does actually do like the scratches and Sky does scratching. And so like definitely.
Do they do that live or is that tracks live?
So Sky plays guitar live most of the time, but I think once in a while he might jump back there and do it. I'm not sure.
That would be kind of sick.
I'm trying to think. Like when I've seen them live a couple times. I want to say that. Were you at Fochella last year?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, so last year Cheem played.
I'm looking forward to seeing them at Excellency this year. That's going to be sick.
I will get Excellency also, by the way.
Hell yeah.
I'm pretty sure. But because we're sponsoring.
Yeah, that's right.
Sponsors,
that's
which
right.
is cool. So that was excellent. We were stoked that they asked us. But yeah, so Cheem, when I've seen them both times before, Sky played guitar pretty much the whole time, but they did kind of like a live version of Smooth Brain that was really cool with a backing track. So like I know they do a little bit of like, they have the abilities.
Yeah.
I just don't know whether Sky would, jump off guitar for something like that. But,
I think that it would be a really cool moment to like just bring the decks out, but I don't know, especially like touring situations.
Might not travel well too.
Exactly, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I know like Sky though did do some scratching on one of Nelson's songs.
Oh, all right,
like
cool.
a remix he did or something.
That's sick.
Yeah. Also, my camera keeps dying and turning back on. I'm sorry,
shit.
But it has audio, so it'll line up with the audio.
I was gonna say, as long as the audio stays solid, then everything else is just gravy.
The audio's recording on my. That's been recording the whole time, so we're good there. But yeah, so you're the next choice, though. Oh, by the way, I guess we should wrap up with Cheem. I don't want to just like move on from them.
Yeah.
I know that they're gonna have, I know that they're playing at Excellency. I know that they're a great show live. I know that they're always working on new music. Nobody sounds like Cheem.
No.
And so I'll throw that out there. Like everybody should listen to Cheem. It's like literally you're denying yourself fun if you don't listen to them.
100%. I think that they are one of my favorite new bands simply just because of how fun and unique and interesting all their stuff is. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah, Cheem fucking rocks. And they're like another band. You want to talk about a groove.
Yeah.
That band has a fucking groove.
Oh
Their
my
rhythm
God.
section, that bass and drums, oh my God.
They're so locked in, so tight.
I know. And they are live too. Like they're just
I'm sure.
They're like a next level band. They're next level band.
Dude, I fucking can't wait. All right, so my final song of the evening, I got to give a little bit of a shout out to my homie on Twitter, Adrian. who goes by Big Pikachu on Twitter. We were talking at Fochella, and I asked him because he's from Texas, and said that there's not like really a huge scene down there, and like that he's fairly far away from like
I was gonna say it depends
stuff.
on where, Texas. Yeah.
And so he was saying that like probably like El Paso is like the closest place that like has like a little bit of a scene. But so I was just asking like, oh, do you have any like favorite local bands from the scene that I should check out? And the one that he immediately said was this band called Mia Antifa, and they are this really sick punk band that I randomly also just saw a tour announcement for like the other day. But super cool punk album. This song leans a little bit more ska because it's got like some horns and stuff like that in it too. But they are from El Paso, Texas. Band is called Mia Antifa, and this song is A-Cab.
Song kicks ass too. That was a really great song. Again, kind of has a throwback sound still. Again, like that older, like last wave of ska kind of happened when I was younger. It's like
you were
know?
mentioning Streetlight, which definitely makes a lot of sense because it's like
seen them a lot of times.
It's got that faster, heavier kind of like guitar with like the really cool unison horn lines.
That where the horns almost sound heavy as fuck, just because of like they're going with the, you know what I mean? Like they have like those drops and stuff. It sounds sick. They also, have you ever listened to this band called Authority Zero? They're also old.
No, I haven't.
Okay, they have the fastest singer of any like punk band I've ever heard. Let me see if I could find like so there's a song called like, let's see, Taking on the World. You could do like maybe like, I mean, you don't have to do it for the show, but like,
Yeah.
I'll send you some stuff if you want. But like, it kind of like reminds me of that a little bit too. They were like a very ska band, but they kind of took a more like Arizona sort of influence into it, like Mexico kind of region of like, kind of like, you know, influence in their horns and the ska aspects.
Like a southwestern influence, which very much makes sense because this is also, like I said, El Paso, Texas, so also kind of like, you know, southwestern.
And it has a similar...
Yeah, that's interesting. It
has that punkier sound to it, and they kind of have that too, and they rip. That band rips. I mean, I don't know what they sound like now. This is from 2000. Like, this is when I was a kid. But, you know, like... but, like, it was sick. I'll send it to you. But, yeah, I like that band a lot. So they were called... Will you say their name one more time? Sorry.
Mia Antifa.
Terrible with that. Mia Antifa, that's right. I tried to find them on Twitter a minute ago, but I didn't see them. Do you happen to know if they are on Twitter?
I do not recall. I know that I saw, you've probably seen the Marijuana Brass on Twitter, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I follow.
So one of their horn players is going on tour with this band soon.
Okay.
So that
makes sense.
It was really funny because it was like literally like a day or two after like I listened to this album, that tour got announced, and I was like, wait, holy shit. It's one of those things where it's like you don't notice something and then you like hear about it and you see it everywhere immediately.
Yeah.
That's always like such a weird deal.
Too, you know?
But yeah, it's like, you know, you'll just find a new band and then suddenly you're like, oh, I've been blind to this band forever. They've been running in all these circles and I've just been completely unaware.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, basically that's like everybody on our roster. That's how I find them. All of a sudden they like, hey, didn't you do a song with this band or that one? Like Analog Heart was like, I'm determined to have a feature on every single Lonely Ghost band's albums until you sign me, basically. Like they wanted to do a feature on everybody's album. It was
That's
like funny.
Hilarious.
It's like, but they like knew everybody on the label. That's a thing. But like eventually you kind of get to know people because they know people. And you know, it's like all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize that you were like this tapped into like all the same people I know.
Yeah.
How have I never heard your band, you know? Yeah.
How have we never interacted before, despite being in like
a lot of times it's that you probably heard their old band.
Yeah,
that's the thing. It's like a lot of the times what it is you listen to their old band, you just didn't know that they were in a new band. That's always what it is.
That is very often what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, like especially in DIY, where everybody has a new band like every year. But you know.
But yeah, highly recommend
cool
this whole record. It's so
good.
Do
they have music on like Bandcamp or anything?
Yeah, this song is on Bandcamp. Yeah, this whole album is on Bandcamp. This one is definitely like their most ska-leaning type of song. They've got a couple other songs that have like horns and stuff like that, but I think that this one is the most like overtly ska-based, if that makes sense. But it's like the rest of it is like really, really good punk stuff.
Yeah, it seems like they kind of frame themselves as more of a punk band.
Yeah, but they do have some horns on a couple other tracks too, which I think is cool. I'm just a sucker for a good horn section, no matter what the genre is.
Me too. I mean, I think like horns are, I don't know, it brings a totally different aspect into everything. By the way, Ross Ingram produced, engineered, and mixed this album at his studio Brainville, which may or may not have closed down actually. But Ross Ingram is a fucking talented musician on it. When you said El Paso, I thought I saw Hogarth mentioned, which is another band that's like almost like a shoegazy kind of band out of there. And it's Ross. I want to say it's Ross and some other friends who own that studio down there. Who's making? He's been
involved in a lot of shit that I've found out over the years.
Mixes and professional engineer. He's a really talented guy. But that was just cool. I happened to see that. Sorry, I had to shout it out. But this album, I'm gonna check it out the rest because I actually really love I love punk music. Like that's really the scene I grew up in more than anything as a kid. Yeah. So like, you know, punk and hardcore. It's just like anytime anybody can like really rip a good punk song, I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. Like that's just.
Like I've said, for me, I find it really interesting when I first got into this scene because it was like everybody was like emo, and I'm like that was never the thing that I identified with. I always identified more with like the punk and the metal stuff. So I think it's really cool.
Me too.
I feel like kindred spirits like that kind of find each other because I had the exact same thing with like when I talked to Manor Gates too. Was they were like oh yeah, we're doing this like emo band thing, but like we're very much like, you know, influenced a lot more by like metal and hardcore and stuff like that. And I don't know, even when you're not making that type of music, I feel like we can find each other.
Yeah, well, I think like there's always like a little bit of it in there. You know what I mean? Like it's just like people who are attracted to that kind of thing, like you can kind of hear like versions of it, or like where they're borrowing from some of the same techniques, or you know, and I love that kind of shit. Like also though, I don't know, like band like Manor Gates kind of makes sense. Have you ever met them at Coachella?
Yeah. I've met them a couple times.
Yeah, I could see it. You know, they kind of come off more as like punks. You know what I mean? Not like in a bad way, but just like, you know, yeah.
They've got that attitude, especially on stage for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, they're cool. They're pretty nice. And didn't they played in Will's band, right? I think they played in Full Blown Meltdown.
Yeah,
also,
they I mean, two of them did.
They're very talented people in general. Sorry, I was just pulling up my last song here. So this one's on Bandcamp. I sent you the link, right? So it's called No Items Ever.
That is so fucking sick. That's so cool.
I'm trying to, so we put out, they're not like, he's not technically like signed to the label, but like we put out his tape. He's a fan of the label. I've been a fan of his music a long time. But here's the thing. He has like 10 fucking projects, and they're all that quality.
That's
like,
amazing.
His metalcore project is fucking crazy. I just sent you a post of like a thread of just like all the different shit. Like, just real quick, if you just click on like the metalcore, hardcore, deathcore, heavy stuff.
Okay.
Just real quick on there.
Holy shit. Yeah, that sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
Everything they do, everything he does is fucking, he's like one of the most talented artists I've ever heard in my life. Everything he touches is fucking incredible. So like, and I'm pretty sure he also does his own visual art also.
That's awesome.
I follow him on Twitter at Hyena Blood. I believe that's like the main account, but I'm not sure. But I think that's kind of like considered the hub for like all the various like visual art projects, music art projects, all of it. Very cool.
Yeah.
So this was something, and he takes like years. He showed me this album, like he was sketching out like 2 years ago, probably. I heard some of this because he has like, as you see, like
so many projects.
Putting out like a studio sounding album like every fucking few months. Like it's crazy.
That is incredible.
I don't understand it. Very, very talented. So definitely check him out. We might have, let me check real quick. I think we might have sold out of his tapes. There are 3 left in stock as of today on our store. And then he has some copies as well.
I might have to pick one up because that was incredible.
Rips, right? Fucking rips, yeah.
I really like the synth sound choices. Like it's all
so it's
very,
like chiptune, but it's like that,
It's like the modern chiptune thing though. Like this isn't like
it's not
strictly
8-bit.
It's like it's like the sort of like modern like chiptune aesthetic sort of deal. I had a guy on the podcast forever ago before I was even doing video who went by Heart Piece. That this reminds me a lot of with like the synth sounds. He called himself Kawaii Bass. Which was
that's kind of an interesting
it was
description.
It was like future bass, but like this like sort of like more 8-bit like cutesy style, and the synth sounds were very similar, which I thought was really cool. And as I like kind of mentioned earlier when we were just talking about like synthesizers, I absolutely love cool synth bends, and that's like it's like there's some sort of like soul to it that's really cool. You just like, I mean, it's the same as like bending on a guitar. It's like there's a way that you can kind of like lean into the bend, and like there's some soul to it that I really, really think is just incredible.
And also, I think it gives it a little bit more of that sort of like live, sort of real feel to it. Like you're really listening to somebody play something.
Well,
because like when you get things that are like too perfect, you know what I mean?
It also like mimics the human voice because the human voice never realistically, unless you're running it through like auto-tune or something like that, is always wavering here and there. And I think that that's another thing where like instruments that like you add a little bit of vibrato and do like the slides and bends and like that sort of thing. I think that a lot of what that is kind of like mimicking more aspects of the human voice, which makes people more likely to connect with it on a deeper level, which is really interesting.
I think that that's a good point, because it does have like that, you know, obviously most of that album, I don't know, obviously to you, but like obviously that song didn't have vocals on it.
Yeah.
A lot of Plasma Cutter does not, but it works because it's like instrumental music, but it has a lot of energy
of the vocals.
Yes, exactly it. Like it kind of still feels that same like wave where it carries a melody that feels separate from like the rest of the instrumental, so it kind of gives you that feeling still.
Yeah.
But like, very cool project. I mean, like, the thing about DIY is like it really doesn't get enough credit. For as much as people talk shit and say like this scene sucks and the band suck and all that, like everything you just heard today that I showed you, and I'm pretty sure everything you just showed me, was fucking DIY.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like,
it's all just people doing cool shit that they think is really neat. And I mean, again, it's really just like people in DIY specifically are much more likely to think outside the box and like try new stuff.
Yeah, it's because they don't have to market it. Right?
Exactly.
Like that's the point. It's like we're not trying to sell you anything, or even if we are, the marketing is the fact that you'll never hear another band like this. More so than it's ever going to be the fact that like you will, right? Like I think in DIY it's more about like sometimes it's about the personality, sometimes it's about the sound, sometimes it's about the aesthetic. But like I think the bands that people tend to like gravitate towards, they tend to like spark onto something. Right? There's something that people see or hear.
There's that X factor
they really identify with.
Yeah.
And that makes them, like want to know more. And so like maybe not everything is going to be unfamiliar. Maybe not everything is like the most unique thing you've ever seen. But there's going to be something that makes you remember it a lot of the times in DIY, because that's the bands that survive, or the bands that do something to make you remember them. Everybody else is, not in an offensive way, but it's like there's so many fucking bands that you encounter on any given day if you want to, especially if like me, where I'm like always looking at bands. It's like you have to have something that like will make me remember you.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's kind of, eventually it's like blends into itself. And like I think DIY as a whole collective kind of like everybody seems to fill like different niches more than like traditional record labels where you're still trying to sell 5 of the same similar sounding artists. In DIY, it's like a collection of people being like, bet you never heard shit like this before. And they're playing like the craziest riff you ever heard with like vocals that don't sound like they should be with the song, but it works. Or sometimes it doesn't, but the idea is good and you know it will work someday, and you're like, that band's cool, but like maybe they need to practice.
I think that's the other cool thing too, is being able to watch the evolution in real time of of artists figuring out their sound, especially when you're...
That's me, like, for sure, you know,
especially like, you know, you start following somebody, like people start sharing around like, ooh, this band just dropped their first single, and you're like, all right, cool. You listen to it, you're like, all right, this is kind of neat. But being able to watch in real time over the course of like a couple of years, like them kind of like find their sound and find their niche and figure out what that's gonna be, is like, there's a connection to that I think really helps that as well.
And I think like the difference between being like in this scene is really just like what the punk scene felt like 20 years ago. I mean, like, in my opinion, DIY is just like what the modern punk scene kind of is, because punk is not like really punk anymore, and DIY is kind of like punk now, and like, you know, it all just kind of like did this
everything
thing,
got
right?
shuffled
like,
a little bit. Yeah.
Like the ethos of punk 20 years ago kind of feels more in line with like what DIY is now. But like, you know, it's just kind of like this thing where, you know, everybody's kind of finds out and like gets to be a part of something as it's being developed, and so they get to feel like they're a part of it. Like, people who are fans of a band from the time they have like think about a band like Red Sun. And how many people in the scene fucked with Red Sun when they had like 100 or 50, you know, monthlies or 300 or whatever. So to watch that band like go from like a couple singles to an EP to, I'm sure, their album and what that will look like, and the fandom that they've kind of brought in, and the sound that people have kind of gravitated towards, and what that might make them want to write next. Like, you know, you kind of feel like I'm a part of this thing, especially when you're, I think, like the kids who participate in the scene who are younger, who are kind of looking for that same experience of like finding community. Yeah. Finding some people who maybe share some aspects of like identity or shared experiences with them. You know, that's what like I think get a lot of people into these alternative scenes when they're young, is to find people who like maybe are willing to be a little bit more on the fringes of society, who don't necessarily look at like the way things are and say like, this is fucking cool, I want to fit into this. Yeah. You know, and so like, I think like DIY is a place like that. And I think, you know, with that, you get to kind of be a part of something different, right? Like, everybody who's at Coachella, like, some of those bands are going to be fucking huge. Some of these people who are at that show, their kids are going to hear those bands and be like, holy shit, they're going to be like Fall Out Boy to them or something someday.
You know what I mean? I can't believe that you saw them play at a dive bar. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, you get to like be like, yeah, I fucking talk to them. I know them, baby. You know what I mean? Like, and like, a lot of these people just be like, that was a good fucking time in a band that I'll never be able to see again. Yeah. And like, that's a special moment that me and like 200 people got to share in a room. You know, think about like what people talk about, like those old snowing shows where the floors were fucking collapsing, or Title Fight shows, which, you know, I got to see Title Fight too, luckily. But like, you know, all those old, like really iconic sort of pictures and moments and shit. And like, that's what DIY is kind of producing right now. It's like these moments that like will matter.
It's the thing that you don't realize when you're in it, that you're like, you're potentially watching history in the making every single day when you're watching all this stuff. And you don't necessarily know who's going to blow up and who isn't. But it's like, you know, sometimes you just see somebody start to take off and you're like, that's incredible to watch. And being able to like see it in real time is really neat.
And you know, the other thing is just like, you don't really know how people will influence each other. And so like, these projects that might be really obscure right now, that never take off, in fucking 10 years, you hear that like these bands that matter a lot were in this little DIY scene over here, and they listen to this one fucking band, and all of them wanted to sound like that. You know what I mean? And like,
I've talked about that a lot too, that often the most influential bands aren't the most popular. Often the most influential
almost never,
bands,
because they have to be doing something that is hard to sell.
Exactly. So the most influential bands are the bands that flew under the radar, were kind of like on the fringes of things, and then people saw that and went, that's some cool fucking shit, and then started to do their own thing, kind of taking what they learned from that. And that's truly influence, I think.
And that's my dream for like the Lonely Ghost as like a label for like the bands on it, is that like, maybe not that all of them will fly under the radar, but like that people will hear like, you know, people doing their own thing, people making music that maybe they wouldn't have really put together or thought about, and say like, wow, I have these two things that don't go together, and maybe I should try to go make that music that nobody says should exist or sounds cool, or that, you know, nobody's really made before, and maybe there is no real audience for it right now. Like, I promise you, there's barely an audience for Superdestroyer right now. There's not an audience when I started. And like, you know, whether I ever have a real one or not doesn't really fucking matter, does it? What matters is the fact that I got to do this cool thing. I got to be involved with cool people. I got to maybe help people like feel confident in exploring their own ability to like make something different, or know that like, hey, I'm in your corner. Make your weird shit. You send it to me when it's done. I'll tell you it rocks, and then I'm going to pay money to put it out. Yeah. And like, you know, that's actually not a common deal for people to have. And like, that's not a common relationship for people to have with music that's being released in any commercial sense.
Yeah.
Outside of DIY, you know? And so like, but that matters because a band like Hey, I Love You is much more of a, like an established band now. And they sound weird as shit. And, you know, I think that is the future of things. It's like you help people kind of find their audiences and, you know, some of those audiences will be very large. Some of those are not going to be as large. But like, I think that's kind of the dream, right? Is like maybe you can convince some other people to make some music that is fucking cool.
Absolutely. I think that's a good note to end on. Is there anything
Me too,
else?
actually. I was going to say the same thing.
Is there anything else that you want to hit on one last time before we sign off for the end of the episode?
Just, you know, if you're listening to this, you're tapped into DIY. So thank you for supporting it. But like, you know, check out, remember, like all these artists that are shouting on the internet that are like, check out my song, like for real, somebody has to be the first person to listen to them. Somebody has to be their first fan. Somebody has to be the first person to try to convince other people to like them. And like the big thing about Lonely Ghost, the only reason it exists is because I love being that guy. I want to be one of the first people saying your music fucking rocks. Not the 100,000s. I don't want to be the person who put out your album, you know, after you put out 5 albums. I want to be the person that's like finding that shit. And like, you can do that too. It doesn't take a lot of money. I made $20,000 a year when I started Lonely Ghost. I lived in a bedroom in a house with 4 other people. I was working on a degree. I had a contract saying I could not work outside of the university. And so like I started this label just more so on the philosophy of like, let's support each other. And like anybody can do it. Reply Guy Records, they're doing it. They're small. Yeah, you know, like, I mean, like ultimately like start a small label, support some fucking local bands, learn how to get a tape deck. They cost like probably a little bit more than when I started because they're a little bit more popular than they used to be. But like you can buy a used tape deck for a couple $100. It's going to sound like shit and it's not going to last very long. But you can rip a few albums out of that and you could probably help bands do some shit. And you could, you know, more than anything, most people just need help. They need support. They need people to help them do things to spread the word. And like, that's what it's all about. So like,
that's why I do this.
You know what I mean? Exactly. Just go fucking do it. Like, and you know, trust me, if nothing else, you're going to be able to meet like bands and talk to people who make cool music and understand it on a different level, or, you know, it's just a different thing. You get to have a good time.
This has been the Fresh Finds Podcast, the show about discovering new music with good people.